It's been 12 months since acquittal, and so much has passed us by. Such a scattering with evidence, and some blatant flat-out lies. There's a special new press sector, and Hank Breeden is his name. He is a dirty Boston lawyer, and his arguments are lame. He's tried to squash all of our experts, as he has no case to claim. He should have won an Oscar medal to convince the court he's sane. He can lie without a conscience and keep that smirk upon his face. I bet he wears those silky undies, the ones with edging made of lace. And Judge Beverly Academy is so biased for the state, is wading through 100 motions in a rush to seal my fate. So you can bring in Massachusetts, cause we all ain't got no quit. And we all know that the truth is my car is not the thing John hit.
Into this case. Yes. Everyone said yes or nodded affirmatively. Did anyone happen to see, hear, read anything about this case since we left here yesterday? Everyone said no or should take. Thank you very much. Can we have Dr. Scordi-Bello, please?
You solemnly swear to demonstrate the court and jury in the case now here to the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Lally. Good morning, doctor.
Good morning.
Morning, Doctor.
Good morning.
Dr. Scordi-Bello, if I could ask you some questions, just turning back a little bit from what you were testifying to about yesterday. You had mentioned in your testimony yesterday that you had received some, in addition to the internal and external examination that you conducted with Mr. O'Keefe, you had received some other material that you had reviewed, correct?
Correct.
Now, included within that material was some material from the state police as far as the investigative agency investigating Mr. O'Keefe's death.
Correct.
Now, is that is that typical? Is that abnormal? If you could describe sort of in general terms, as far as what, if any, communication would you typically have with the investigating body or agency in relation to any sort of autopsy or examination you do?
Yes. In Massachusetts, under Massachusetts law, the medical examiner's office is responsible, and our role is to determine the cause and manner of death by doing an autopsy. The scene or the scene of death or the place where the decedent is found is controlled by the district attorney's office, and state police will do an investigation. When we accept a case into our office, we request reports, police reports, to explain and describe the circumstances of the death. It could be a house, it could be somewhere else, it could be outside. Every case comes with a police report, and we review that police report, and if we feel that we need more information, then we contact the investigating body and ask for more information, again, depending on the case.
And specifically in this case, in regard to Mr. O'Keefe, did you reach out to get some more information?
I did reach out, yes.
Was that in part in relation to what you were talking about in your testimony yesterday, as far as the diagnosis of hypothermia and trying to sort of better understand the circumstances?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Why did you reach out?
I reached out because when the case was presented to us, and after I did the autopsy, I did not have all the information that I needed in order to certify the manner. The cause of death to me was, I was able to determine the cause of death from the autopsy. When an event is unwitnessed, we usually reach out to the investigating agency and ask them whether they have any more information than they did on the day that the autopsy was done, because investigations sometimes take some time. So in the days and the weeks following the autopsy, I reached out and asked if there was any more information than what I was originally presented with. Was there any video from the surrounding areas? Did anybody come forward to say that they actually witnessed whatever happened? Again, by the time I was ready to finalize the case, and we have approximately 3 months or 90 days from the day of the autopsy until we issue a report, I was not provided with enough information for me to be able to determine the manner.
Now, Doctor, do you recall specifically who it was that you spoke with from the state police?
Yes, I documented that I spoke with Trooper Proctor, I believe, twice.
And with reference, not asking you anything as far as what that conversation consisted of, but as far as the tone of that conversation, did you feel pressured or coerced to come up with a certain determination?
No, I did not.
And even if you had been, what would your response have been in reference to that?
My response was that I am responsible for what goes on the death certificate, and unless I have enough information, clear and convincing evidence, I cannot determine a manner.
Thank you. May I approach?
Yes.
Doctor, I'm showing you 5 photographs that I gave you yesterday. Do you recognize those?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize those to be?
I recognize these as photographs of Mr. O'Keefe's body. I believe these were taken at the hospital. One of them is a photograph taken at the time of autopsy.
Okay. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm going to seek to introduce the minutes and executives.
Ms. Little? No objection, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, may I have a moment? I just want to make sure they're in the
Yes.
right order. May I approach again?
Yes.
Your Honor, with court's permission, may we call the seats of the jury?
So jurors, remember the instruction I gave you yesterday on these photographs, okay?
Ms. Gilman, if I can have photographs 2853. Doctor, do you recognize what's up on the screen?
Yes, this is a picture taken of Mr. O'Keefe's body.
And Doctor, if you could, using the laser pointer that you have there, direct jury's attention to what, if anything, you observe of significance in this photograph related to the injuries that you were testifying about this.
Yes. So first thing you notice is the medical intervention, which I talked about yesterday. There's defibrillator adhesive pads on the chest. There is what's known as a C-collar, a cervical stabilization collar for the neck, and he has been intubated prior to going to the hospital. The injuries that are obvious in this picture include the abrasions on his right forearm and arm. And you can see here, there is discoloration of the upper eyelid of the right eye with some blood that's dripping. That's the orbital or supraorbital ecchymosis that I described before with we're too far to see the very, very small laceration that is present there, but that's what's causing the bleeding.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have photograph 2857. Now, doctor, this is not before you at the current time of currently marked as exhibit 442. Do you recognize what's up on the screen?
Yes, this is a picture of the abrasions that I described in my report. Posterior upper arm and forearm. You can see that they have some sort of pattern to it. Anytime we see a pattern, we try to document it as best as we possibly can.
Now, doctor, with reference to these injuries as far as the abrasions to Mr. O'Keefe's right arm, what kind of role did that play as far as your determination, as far as the cause of death of Mr. O'Keefe?
These are superficial abrasions to the skin. They are not lethal. They're not contributory to the cause of death. The trauma that I observed on the head along with the hypothermia are the two factors contributing to his death. These are present, they're noted, they're described, they're photographed, but I do not know how they came to be, and I did not contribute them to the cause of death.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have photograph 2860. Doctor, returning to the exhibits of the photos that you have before you, do you recognize what's up on screen here?
Yes, this is a photograph of Mr. O'Keefe's right hand. This is the dorsum or the dorsal aspect of the hand as opposed to the palm. And you can see that there are some contusions or bruises. There's a larger one here and two very small ones here. This particular contusion has two pinpoint small defects associated with it. I believe this could be due to attempts at gaining IV access during the many attempts of resuscitation, but I cannot be absolutely sure.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have a photograph 2865. And Dr. Scordi-Bello, if you could, again, using the way to point direct jury's attention to what, if anything, of significance you note in this photograph.
Again, this is a slightly closer view of Mr. O'Keefe's face. You can see the discoloration, the ecchymosis on the right eye with a slight amount of bleeding. You can see here that there's also some discoloration of his left eyelid.
And doctor, with reference to the other injuries that you were testifying about yesterday, as far as the small cuts or abrasions or lacerations, are those visible in this photograph as well?
I can't hear your question. If you could just repeat it and a little louder.
Sure. My apologies, doctor. With reference to this photograph, as far as your testimony yesterday in regard to the other smaller injuries around the nose and eyes area of Mr. O'Keefe, are those visible in this photograph as well?
You can see some discoloration of the nose, but this is not a very good picture of it. I think there's a linear abrasion on the left side of the nose that I described, and it's probably this.
Ms. Gilman, could I photograph 2877? And doctor, if you could, again, using the laser pointer direct jury's attention to what, if anything, is significant you observed in this photo.
Yes, this is the view of the left side of Mr. O'Keefe's face. You can see the discoloration of the left eyelid, and now you can see this linear abrasion on his nose and a small abrasion more towards the middle of his nose.
Ms. Gilman, lastly, from this set, if I could have photograph 9488. Saying, Dr. Scordi-Bello, if you could, using the laser pointer direct jury's attention to what, if anything, is significant you observed in this.
This is the laceration to the back of Mr. O'Keefe's head. You can see this defect here. It's ragged. It's a typical classic blunt impact injury, and you can see the abrasion, the scrape that is adjacent to it.
Thank you, doctor. Ms. Gilman, you can take that. And doctor, we get out the lights. Thanks. Now, doctor, with reference to what you were testifying yesterday as far as the subscapular bleeding, the bleeding under the scalp, was that more or less prominent on one side versus the other side of Mr. O'Keefe's scalp?
Yes, it was more prominent under that laceration that we just looked at.
And so would that be more prominent on the right side? Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, you testified yesterday about a blunt object injury in relation to the injury to the back of the head, then leading to the fractures and the bleeding in the brain, correct?
Correct.
And then further leading to the ecchymosis, is that correct?
In the eyes, yes.
Now, that blunt object, what, if anything, can you say about what that blunt object could be?
Could be any blunt object.
Now, from your training experience with reference to the number of autopsies and examinations that you've conducted over the years, would that blunt object possibility include the ground, especially if it was frozen ground?
Objection. Ask the question differently.
The injuries that you observed to the back of Mr. O'Keefe's head, skull fracture, would that be consistent with a fall to the ground?
It could be.
Would that be consistent with being projected by an object, say in a pedestrian collision, and then striking your head on the ground?
It's possible.
Now, the arm injuries that you observed, would those be consistent with scratches from either glass or a piece of plastic or a piece of metal?
It's possible.
And the injuries that you observed, would that be consistent with injuries that you observed in other cases of a pedestrian collision?
They're not the classic pedestrian injuries that we observe, no.
And to that point, as far as when you say classic, as far as a pedestrian collision is concerned, you've conducted autopsies on a number of different pedestrian collisions over the course of your career, is that correct?
Yes, I have.
Do they all sort of mirror each other? Is there sort of a disparity depending on how the person interacted with the car?
Objection.
Sustained. Watch the form, Mr. Lally.
What, if anything, are every injuries from a pedestrian collision the same?
No.
And why not?
It depends on many factors. It depends on the position of the body, of the pedestrian or the person being struck. It depends on whether they are moving or standing still. It depends on the speed of the car. It depends on whether brakes were applied or not. There's a lot of factors that come into play.
Would another factor be sort of the shape of the vehicle that strikes a pedestrian?
That's also possible. Yes, that's a factor.
And did you have occasion to see any photographs, or have you seen any photographs in relation to the defendant's vehicle in this case?
I have seen photographs, yes.
And the size or shape of that vehicle, what, if any, significance did that have to you as far as your examination?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
When we have a potential vehicle, clearly we look at the height, because one of the things that we do in most or all pedestrian or people struck by a motor vehicle is look at the legs, because in the majority we see injuries to the legs from the bumper of the car. Again, depending on the kind of car, the size of the car, and the height of the bumper. So in Mr. O'Keefe, I did not see any injuries in the lower extremities. And looking at the car, I did note that it was a much bigger car with much higher, I would say much higher taillight bumper. It was not a sedan or a car that's low to the ground where the bumper would be at the level of, let's say, the knee or slightly above or slightly below.
And again, I believe yesterday in your testimony, you indicated that the skull is a pretty thick bone. Is that correct?
Yes.
Sustained.
With regards to the thickness of the skull bone, what, if any, significance, or what, if any, can you say as far as the type or amount of force that would be would be necessary to cause the fracture that you observed?
Objection.
Overruled.
I would consider the amount of force to be significant, again, without being able to quantify it.
Can I have a moment, John?
Yes.
Now, doctor, from the internal and external examination that you conducted in regard to Mr. O'Keefe, as well as the other materials that you reviewed, were you able to come to an opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty as to the cause of death of John O'Keefe?
Yes, the cause of death was due to blunt impact injuries of the head and hypothermia.
Thank you, doctor. Your Honor, I have no further questions.
All right. Cross-examination.
Good morning, Dr. Scordi-Bello.
Good morning.
Ms. Little, keep your voice up.
Absolutely. You testified regarding a number of injuries that you referred to as blunt impact injuries, correct?
Yes,
And to be clear, blunt impact injuries are a very, very large category that includes contusions, lacerations, abrasions, and fractures.
correct.
And you testified similarly that a blunt object can also refer to a large range of objects. Is that right?
Correct.
And I think yesterday you gave the example of a microphone being a blunt object.
Correct.
It could also include something like a baseball bat,
Correct.
a dumbbell,
Could be.
the ground,
Yes.
or a German Shepherd's claws.
Claws. Possibly, yes.
You'd agree that John O'Keefe had a number of blunt impact injuries on his face, on his head, and his right arm.
Yes.
Besides his right arm, which we'll discuss in a second, taking his body from the neck down, he did not have any significant injuries.
From the neck down. Not significant, no.
Let's take those one at a time. No injury whatsoever to his shoulders.
Correct.
No injuries whatsoever to his chest area, aside from sort of the CPR-related injuries that you discussed.
Yes, correct.
And that was in the sternum. Is that right?
It was in the ribs, just adjacent to the sternum. Yes.
Okay. No injuries to his torso, other than that.
No.
No injuries to his back.
No.
No injuries to his hips.
Correct.
No injuries to his pelvis.
Correct.
No injuries to his thighs.
To his,
Thighs.
no.
No injuries to his knees.
Correct.
No injuries to his shins.
Correct.
No injuries to his ankles.
Correct.
No injuries to his feet.
Correct.
From the neck down, he did not have a single broken bone, again, aside from those CPR-related injuries you discussed, correct?
That's correct.
Not a single fracture.
Other than CPR, correct.
And you spoke earlier about how the bumper was a little higher than on, say, a regular sedan, correct?
Correct.
And so usually in a pedestrian collision, you would see injuries to the knees. Is that right?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
Depending on the kind of car, depending on the speed, depending on the height of the individual and the car, you might see injuries to their lower extremity. Yeah.
But in this case, you didn't see any injuries to his thighs, to his pelvis, anything even at the height of the bumper. Is that correct?
Correct. A very minor abrasion to the side of his right knee.
So surely you'd agree that John O'Keefe's injuries, or lack thereof, are inconsistent with having been struck by a 7,000-pound vehicle at 24 miles per hour and being projected 30 feet.
Objection.
Sustained. Break it down, ask it differently.
Would you agree that John O'Keefe's injuries, are, or lack thereof, are inconsistent with having been struck by a vehicle at 24 miles per hour?
I would say it's likely and unlikely at the same time, depending on the position of the body and the vehicle in question.
Well, let me give you a hypothetical. Let's say the person were standing with their arm like this, and they were struck by the rear taillight of a vehicle at 24 miles per hour. Would you agree that his injuries are inconsistent with that scenario?
Objection.
Sustained.
Maybe approach, Your Honor.
Sure.
You are unmuted.
Would you agree that John O'Keefe's injuries to his arm, let's start there, are inconsistent with having been struck by a vehicle at 24 miles per hour and then causing him to spin around and be projected 30 feet?
Okay, so you need to break it down.
Would you agree that John O'Keefe's injury to his arm are inconsistent with having been struck by a vehicle at 24 miles per hour?
I don't know. I am not a reconstruction expert. I'm not a biomechanics expert. I never personally inspected the car, so I can't offer an opinion on that.
You did examine John O'Keefe's arm, correct?
Yes,
You observed no significant bruising,
correct.
no fractures,
Correct.
and no broken bones.
Correct.
I'd like to talk about the injuries to John O'Keefe's face. You testified that Mr. O'Keefe had a laceration on his right upper eyelid.
Correct.
You also described multiple abrasions on his nose.
2. Yes.
Although these injuries may not have been the ultimate cause of his death, you'd agree that less severe injuries can still be very important in interpreting the manner or the context in which that person died, correct?
Correct.
And in furtherance of that, you've been taught that when doing an autopsy, details matter,
Correct.
no matter how small.
Correct.
And that's one of the reasons as a medical examiner, you have to notate every single injury you find on a person. Is that
Correct.
right? If I could show you. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes. Show Mr. Lally.
Do you recognize that photograph?
I do.
And is that a photograph that was taken in connection with your autopsy?
Yes, it was taken at the time of autopsy after the face was cleaned.
Moved to admit.
I'm sorry, after what?
The face was cleaned up.
Okay.
I moved to admit, Your Honor.
Any objection, Mr. Lally?
No, Your Honor.
Okay.
Exhibit 650.
Permission to publish?
Yes.
Are these the facial injuries that you were testifying to earlier?
Yes.
And could you kind of describe in that photograph what injuries you observed to his face?
The orbital ecchymosis on both eyes, the small laceration to the right eyelid, the abrasions on the nose.
And you testified that the injuries to his face were also the result of a blunt force trauma.
Correct.
So that's the laceration to the eye and the 2 abrasions that we see there on his nose.
Correct.
And you agree that those injuries don't just manifest out of nowhere, right?
Absolutely.
They have to originate from something.
Yes.
Would you agree that his injuries to his face are consistent with having been punched?
That is a possibility.
You can take that down, Mr. Bates. Thank you. Your internal examination notes also cite a tongue laceration on the right front of the victim's tongue. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And you'd agree that a tongue laceration can be also caused by blunt force trauma.
Correct.
And that could also include something like a punch to the victim's face or jaw.
That's a possibility.
In addition to the facial injuries, you described that Mr. O'Keefe had a significant laceration on the back of his head.
He had 1 laceration to the back of his head. Correct.
I believe we saw a photograph of that
Yes.
a little bit earlier. You testified that the skin around the laceration on the back of his head was also scratched. Do you recall
Yes. I do.
that? But you did not testify as to how you opined that might have happened.
No.
Would you agree that someone could certainly get scratched on the back of their head if they were, for instance, dragged on the ground?
It's possible.
You described the open wound to the back of his head as a laceration, which is sort of a blunt force injury that's not the result of sharp force trauma. Is that right?
Yes.
And you'd agree that Mr. O'Keefe's head injury came from some sort of blow to the back of the head, whether it be an object or the ground. Is that
Yep.
right?
Yes.
Objection.
Hold on a minute.
And that injury could be the result of falling backward from a standing position onto concrete.
It's possible.
It could also be the result of being struck with a large object such as a baseball bat or a barbell.
It's possible.
In other words, it was an irregular laceration that resulted from some blunt force trauma.
Correct.
I'd like to sort of circle back to those injuries to Mr. O'Keefe's arm. You testified that there were, again, no fractures, no broken bones, no significant contusions.
Correct.
But you did describe the wounds to Mr. O'Keefe's arm as having discrete linear abrasions, which were caused by some sort of blunt object, correct?
Yes.
What does discrete mean?
It means each one is an individual injury as opposed to confluent where it would be all meshed together.
Your Honor, if I could publish what's been previously marked as Exhibit 19.
Okay.
And these are sort of the linear wounds that you're referring to.
Yes.
And you testified that these also sort of appear in clusters or groups. You call
Yes.
them pattern abrasions. Is that right?
Yes, I did.
And you'd agree that, for example, road rash does not result in this type of discrete linear wounds.
It could, but not exactly like this.
Well, typically road rash covers sort of a large area of the skin. It would be a large abrasion. I mean, you've seen numerous cases of road rash in your
Yes.
career. And it doesn't look like that.
Correct.
Blunt force trauma can include injuries from various objects, as you testified, including an animal paw, correct?
Correct.
And you'd agree that these discrete linear abrasions are inconsistent with having been struck by a smooth rear taillight at 24 miles per hour.
Objection.
Can you answer that, doctor?
I can't. By
Okay.
smooth, no.
All right, next question.
By a smooth rear taillight, you said that is not what you would see at 24 miles per hour, correct?
Objection.
Sustain.
As you testified earlier, you've indicated that based on the facts that were presented to you, you don't know what caused those significant scratches on Mr. O'Keefe's right arm.
I do not.
May I approach, Your Honor? Sure.
If I could just see what was.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Lilly. Do you recognize that photograph?
I do. It's a photograph of Mr. O'Keefe's right hand.
May I mark that as the next in order?
Is there an objection?
May we approach?
Okay.
Dr.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Permission to publish?
Well, we need to mark it first. So we'll mark it for identification, and then when it's appropriate, it will be transferred to being an exhibit.
Thank you.
But yes, you can publish. Is it all set to be published appropriately?
Yes, Your Honor.
The triple N for identification.
Okay.
Dr. Scordi-Bello, you indicated on direct examination that at least that one of the bruises from Mr. O'Keefe's right hand could potentially be attributed to an attempt to get IV fluid into the hand. Is that correct?
Correct.
During the course of your conducting your autopsy, you reviewed records from the Canton Fire Department and EMS, as well as Good Samaritan Hospital. Is that correct?
I did.
And do you recall reviewing records indicating that the IV fluids in this particular case were administered through the tibia and then later through a catheter at the hospital?
Yes, they were administered through intraosseous lines in both legs, shins, and at the hospital, they were administered through a femoral central line. Yes.
And you'd agree that bruising to the backs of hands is also consistent with defensive wounds.
Yes, that's correct.
And there are actually 4 separate distinct bruises outside of the one that you discussed earlier on Mr. O'Keefe's right hand, correct?
Yes, I would say 3, but I can see how you would say 4. 1, 2, 3. That might be 1 together. But yes, I can see how you would say 4.
And you testified yesterday that there was also an injury to Mr. O'Keefe's left hand.
There was a vague contusion on his left hand, correct?
You were asked by Mr. Lowry.
Can we take this down now, Ms. Little?
Yes, Your Honor. You testified on direct examination that you didn't see any sort of obvious signs of a fight because Mr. O'Keefe's fingernails were intact and you didn't observe any fractures on his hands. Is that right?
Correct.
But broken fingernails and fractured hands aren't the only observable signs of a fight. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
In fact, you noted a laceration over his eye.
Yes.
You noticed multiple lacerations on his nose.
Abrasions on his nose. Yes. Yes.
Multiple abrasions on his nose.
Correct.
You noticed a laceration to his tongue.
Yes.
You noted the contusions on the back of his right hand.
Correct.
The injury, the contusion to his left hand as well.
Correct.
And as you just testified, bruising on the back of hands may be consistent with defensive wounds.
It could be.
So in fact, if you have a body that presents with a laceration to one of the brows, a laceration or abrasions to the nose, an egg over an eye, contusions and abrasions on the hands, and a laceration to the tongue, these injuries are consistent with a physical altercation, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
Are those injuries consistent with a physical altercation?
Objection.
Sustained.
Your Honor, may we approach?
Sure.
You are unmuted.
Shifting gears for a second, you indicated on direct examination that you reviewed some photographs from law enforcement that showed no footprints in the snow. Do you recall that testimony?
I do.
Were those provided to you by Trooper Proctor?
Yes.
Do you have those photographs with you?
No, I don't.
Do you recall what was depicted in those photographs?
Yes. If I remember correctly, it was the area of the fire hydrant and the area where Mr. O'Keefe's body was discovered. It's the front of the house, the area of the fire hydrant, and I believe the flagpole.
Thank you. You testified that Mr. O'Keefe had multiple fractures to his skull, but that they seemed to be originating from a single point of impact on the back of his head. Is that correct?
It appeared so, yes.
Are you reasonably certain that all of his injuries were the result of a single impact to the back of the head?
It could be a single impact.
But it also could be multiple impacts, correct?
It could be, yes.
Because as you just testified, Mr. O'Keefe suffered multiple injuries to the front of his face as well.
Correct.
In other words, he could have suffered trauma to the face and then fallen and sustained the injury to the back of the head, correct?
That is possible, yes.
And you testified before the state grand jury that the areas of bruising to the brain were likely due to a fall. Is that correct?
Yes.
In your expert medical opinion, is it possible for someone to get punched in the face hard enough to lose consciousness and fall backward?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
It's possible.
If I can have one.
Sure.
May I see the exhibits that were just marked, Your Honor? Your Honor, if I could have permission to publish what's been previously admitted as Exhibit 19.
Yes.
Dr. Scordi-Bello, it's kind of hard to see in this picture, but there's some redness that you observe on the body by the ribs that we observed in some of the other photographs that were presented by Mr. Lally.
Do we have just one, Your Honor?
Yes.
Yes.
I'd like to show you what's been previously marked as People's Exhibit 648. Ms. Gilman, would it be, Mr. Bates, can you take that down? Ms. Gilman, would it be possible to display Exhibit 648? 648. May I approach, Chairman?
Yes.
2853. Thank you. Dr. Scordi-Bello, you were shown this photograph by Mr. Lally on direct examination.
Yes,
Do you see the redness sort of next to his rib cage on the bottom? Correct.
yes.
What is that?
That is liver,
Lividity?
lividity. Yes,
Can you describe to the jury what lividity is?
yes. Lividity is the pooling of blood to the dependent areas of the body after someone is deceased.
So even though it sort of appears to look like a bruise, that's lividity, correct?
That is lividity. Yes, it goes all the way down.
And it's not the result of an injury?
No.
Thank you. No further questions.
Okay, the lights, please. Thank you. Mr. Lally?
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Scordi-Bello, you did observe a minor abrasion to Mr. O'Keefe's right knee, is that correct?
Correct.
And what part of the knee was that on, if you recall?
It was on the side, on the lateral side of his right knee.
And by lateral, sort of the side that faces away from the body, is that correct?
Correct.
You were asked whether or not the small injuries on Mr. O'Keefe's face could possibly be from a punch, is that correct?
Correct.
You said that's one of the possibilities, is that correct?
Yes.
What are some of the other possibilities?
Could be impact during a fall. It could be coming in contact with any blunt object in the snow.
Would glass be a possibility as far as a blunt object?
It could be under certain circumstances.
Piece of plastic under certain circumstances as far as a blunt object, would that be also a possibility?
Correct. Yes.
Now, as far as the abrasion near the laceration on the back of Mr. O'Keefe's head, you were asking questions about whether or not that could be from dragging, correct?
Correct.
Now, as far as injuries or abrasions concerning dragging, would it be typical to see just one isolated abrasion in the area of the laceration?
Not typical, but possible.
Could that also be a result of the blunt impacts or, as one of the possibilities you testified before, from hitting the ground?
Yes.
Now, you were asked about hitting the ground, specifically hitting concrete. Would that impact injuries to the back of Mr. O'Keefe's head also be consistent with striking his head on frozen ground?
I'm sorry.
No, I'll allow it.
Can you repeat the question?
You were asked a question on cross-examination about the laceration and abrasion to the back of Mr. O'Keefe's head being consistent with striking his head on concrete, correct?
Yes.
Would that also be consistent with striking his head on frozen ground?
Could be. Yes.
You were asked about certain wounds as being a possibility of defensive wounds. What are some of the other types of defensive wounds that you would expect to see that you did not see in this case?
I would expect to see, or I have seen, multiple bruising to the, again, posterior aspects of the forearms. I have seen cuts, lacerations, depending on how a person might be defending themselves, the position of their arms.
And would that also include breaks in the fingernails and fractures to the hands?
Objection.
Watch the form, Mr. Lally. Sustained.
What, if anything else, would that include?
It might include bruising to the knuckles. It might include broken fingers.
Now, with reference to the injuries that you were asked about with respect to Mr. O'Keefe's right hand, would those also be consistent with impact from a blunt object as well?
They are blunt impact injuries. Yes.
Now, again, if I could, just with reference to, you were asked about different possibilities with the skull fractures and bleeding in the brain. What is your opinion as to sort of how that was caused and sort of, if you could, again, just go through your opinion as to the head injuries, the skull fracture, and the bleeding.
Objection.
Ask it again, Mr. Lally, in a different way.
You were asked about some possibilities. What is your opinion as to how those injuries were sustained or manifested in this stroke?
I don't know how they came to be. I described them and I stated previously that they are consistent with a fall to the back of the head.
And so I'm sorry, Doctor. My question is more geared towards as far as the single impact to the back of the skull and then sort of radiating fractures in the skull. If you could explain that in reference to the subdural hemorrhage, subarachnoid hemorrhage, and the ecchymoses that you observed.
Again, a single impact with a fall could cause all the injuries that we're seeing in the brain and the skull.
Okay, I know.
No further questions.
All right, doctor, you are all set. Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Lally.
Thank you, Your Honor. Commonwealth rest.
All right.
Your Honor, the defense would move the court for,
So I'm going to stop you right there. A short recess.
if the court needs one.
I don't need one, but I will see you at sidebar.
Beyond a reasonable doubt. And here, the case that the Commonwealth has submitted to the jury after resting is insufficient to meet such a finding. There's no question but that with this particular prosecution in this particular case, no reasonable or rational jury could come to a unanimous verdict in favor of the Commonwealth. I want to, if I can, focus my argument on count 1, 2, and 3 and a specific element of each count.
Okay.
In each one of those counts, there must be evidence that the vehicle killed John O'Keefe. There has been no competent evidence presented in the Commonwealth's case that Karen Reed's vehicle actually struck John O'Keefe. There's been conjecture, there's been speculation, but no actual competent evidence. The Commonwealth's entire case relies on a theory built on the shoulders of a trooper named Joe Paul, who testified a couple of days ago. And his theory, according to the Commonwealth, is that John O'Keefe's arm was struck, he was spun around in sort of a pirouette, he was projected 30 feet to the left, hit his head on a curb or the road in the intervening time before coming to a final rest spot about 30 feet away. Everything in the Commonwealth's case, everything relies on that theory of damage to the taillight at the scene. If a rational jury could not unanimously determine that Trooper Joe Paul's theory is true beyond a reasonable doubt, then we believe the motion has to be granted. There is no competent medical evidence to support that theory. There's no competent physical evidence that the taillight could break and shatter in the way that they've suggested, and that the arm would not have any breaks or shatters or any damage, any additional damage. There's no evidence how getting hit in the arm could actually launch a body 30 feet, as per the Commonwealth's theory. And there's no evidence how a body hit by a 7,000-pound SUV could sustain no injuries from the neck down, which we just heard this morning. The evidence before the court, the only evidence that is before the court, is that the Commonwealth's own medical examiner does not believe this is a homicide. And she went on this morning to say that in her expert opinion, the injuries are not classic pedestrian injuries. And they are, every single one of them, consistent with a physical altercation. Calling a witness to simply espouse an opinion like Trooper Paul did that belies science, common sense, or even logic, that's not enough to get the case to the jury. The light most favorable to the Commonwealth does not mean that the court must believe the Commonwealth's witnesses. What it means is that if there is a rational controversy in the evidence, the court must accept that evidence that favors the Commonwealth. But here, there is no rational controversy. As put or expressed in Commonwealth versus McCormick, it's a 2023 case found at 491 Mass 848, pinpoint site 860, quote, where the Commonwealth's evidence is entirely circumstantial, it cannot meet its burden if the evidence equally supports inconsistent propositions, as resolution of such a case necessarily requires conjecture or surmise. In our view, there is no question that there's no rational controversy related to the Commonwealth's theory. Trooper Paul's theory is by definition not rational. It's not reasonable. And it's based entirely on conjecture. And that's why, in our view, the court is required to find Ms. Reed not guilty of counts 1, 2, and 3. It's because each of the counts, as I said at the beginning, necessarily include an element that John O'Keefe was struck by Karen Reed's vehicle. Thus, if a rational jury cannot reasonably believe Trooper Paul's theory, it's the only evidence presented by the Commonwealth describing how Mr. O'Keefe possibly could have been struck, then Ms. Reed is entitled to an acquittal. Nothing else matters. Nothing else in the court's evaluation, nothing else in the jury's evaluation, nothing. Everything turns on whether or not the car hit John O'Keefe. And the Commonwealth's only theory of how that happened is from Trooper Paul's description. If the court were to deny this motion, then by doing so tacitly, the court is expressly endorsing Trooper Paul's theory of how John O'Keefe was struck, and we don't believe that that's rational. We don't believe that any rational jury would ever unanimously agree with Trooper Paul, and thus we ask the court to find Ms. Reed not guilty at this time.
Okay.
I'll submit.
Your Honor, if I may just, we have a written motion for the
Okay.
court to act on, pursuant to that argument. May I hand it to you, clerk? And I copy for the-
All right, I will hear you, Mr. Lally.
Yes, Your Honor. Surprisingly, I would disagree with counsel's
So let's leave the comments out.
Your Honor, as far as the comment, all I was going to say is that I would submit to the court
It's
that,
the surprisingly that I took issue.
and my apologies, what I would submit to the court, Your Honor, is that this case does not rest and fall with the testimony of Trooper Paul. Trooper Paul's testimony, while important, when taken in conjunction with the remainder of all of the other witnesses and all of the other testimony that the court has heard, I don't want to minimize it, but at the same time, that is not the only evidence that the vehicle struck Mr. O'Keefe or interacted with Mr. O'Keefe. So what the court has, as far as the physical evidence, next to Mr. O'Keefe's body, one sneaker in the location of the curb, the glass, the drinking glass that Mr. O'Keefe is seen walking out of the Waterfall Bar at approximately 12:11 a.m. with, that is in the vicinity, the direct vicinity where the Canton police officers actually recover it early in the morning of January 29th. You have the microscopic pieces of the defendant's taillight, which was testified by Ms. Hanley to be consistent with pieces of the taillight from the defendant's vehicle that are within or embedded within Mr. O'Keefe's clothing. You have the remainder of the pieces of taillight, and this part is important in relation to Trooper Paul's testimony as far as the linear momentum, and it's all in the same sort of direction and path of all of the roadway evidence that he observed that's discovered in and around the area where Mr. O'Keefe's body was. The testimony from Ms. Valier, with reference to all of those taillight pieces and how they were able to reconstruct front pieces that were found on the ground and then put back together, matching with that, but the taillight housing from the defendant's vehicle. The taillight housing from the defendant's vehicle, which has the victim's, Mr. O'Keefe's DNA contained on it, as well as the mitochondrial DNA testing of the hair that was on the rear right quarter panel of the defendant's vehicle, which also was matched or consistent with that of Mr. O'Keefe, his mitochondrial DNA, as well as court heard from his chart from voting technology. You have the plethora of testimony from the various civilian witnesses from that particular night. You have the evidence of motive from the text communications, as well as the testimony of children in this case as to the state of their relationship, from the defendant's own mouth in those text communications and in those voicemails as to the state of their relationship. You have the testimony in regard to Mr. O'Keefe and his recounting of the state of their relationship and his numerous attempts to break it off with Ms. Reed prior to that date. There are arguments that continue throughout the afternoon of the 28th and seemingly into the 29th. You have the defendant's own statements that I hit him, that come from multiple sources, including firefighter Nuttall, firefighter Flamati, firefighter McLaughlin, and Ms. McCabe. You have her statements to the paramedics in the back of the ambulance that the last time that she saw Mr. O'Keefe, they had gotten into an argument. You have the testimony in regard to Ms. Roberts and Ms. McCabe as far as the altercation or the verbal argument stemming from Ms. McCabe's reference of Bella's mother being a landmark, being someone that Mr. O'Keefe used to date just prior to that argument occurring in front of the house at 34 Fairview Road. With each and every piece of evidence that was presented throughout the course of the Commonwealth's case, including the forensic evidence, including especially one thing I would stress for the court is taking not only Trooper Paul's testimony, but Trooper Paul's testimony in juxtaposition to Trooper Garino's testimony as far as the vehicle or the native GPS locations of Mr. O'Keefe's phone in reference to the timing and in particular the information or data from the Toyota text stream. Trooper Garino's GPS native location of Mr. O'Keefe's phone has that reversal, the same 3-point turn that Trooper Paul testified about, which occurs 8 minutes prior to the vehicle traveling 24.2 miles per hour for approximately 62 feet in a straight line in reverse. And as far as the testimony and the evidence that the court has before it, the court also has those backup testing videos that Trooper Paul conducted with the defendant's vehicle, so the court can see exactly what that vehicle looks like at approximately 25 miles per hour in reverse in a straight line. And what I would submit, Your Honor, is that there's more than sufficient evidence from a medical perspective, from a forensic perspective, from a civilian witness perspective, and from the investigation of this case as to all three indictments that the Commonwealth has met its burden, particularly under the standard before the court at this time. And for those reasons, I would request that the defendant's motion be denied.
Okay. All right. In the light most favorable to the Commonwealth under the prevailing Lattimore standard here in Massachusetts, I am satisfied the Commonwealth has met its burden. The defendant's motion is denied. So, Mr. Yannetti, are you calling your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, so let's bring the jurors in, please.
Court, all rise in the jury. Thank you. This court is back in session. Please be seated.
All right, so jurors, if you remember in my preliminary instructions to you a long time ago now, I stressed to you that the burden of proof rests with the Commonwealth. The defendant has no burden of proof whatsoever, doesn't ever have to testify or present any evidence. So the Commonwealth has completed its case, the Commonwealth has rested, and I want you to keep in mind that the defendant has no burden of proof. Ms. Kennedy, do you have a witness for us?
Thank you very much, Your Honor. The defense calls Brian LOUGHRAN.
Okay.
He is. You solemnly swear the evidence you give the court and jury in the case now hearing the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do. Great. Can I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes.
Good morning, sir. In a good loud voice, would you state your name and spell your last name?
Sure, it's Brian LOUGHRAN. It's LOUGHRAN.
And where are you from,
Mr.
sir?
Loughran, I'm going to ask you to keep your voice up as loud as you can, sir.
Sorry,
That's okay.
Maybe put your mouth as close to the mic as you can. Where did you grow up, sir?
Canton, Mass.
Is that where you live?
Yes,
How long have you lived there?
both 35, 36 years.
And did you go to Canton Public Schools?
Yes,
Now, in the course of living in Canton, were you familiar with the Albert family?
yes,
Which members of the Albert family were you familiar with?
all of them.
And when you say all of them, can you name the ones that you were familiar with?
I was familiar with Brian,
Brian Albert?
Chris Albert, Brendan Albert, Kevin Albert, and I believe Kathy Albert's the sister, but I'm not 100% sure of her first name.
Okay, and those are the siblings that you had contact with and were familiar with?
Yes,
Did you know some better than others?
yes,
Whom did you know the best?
Chris Albert.
What is the age difference between you and Chris Albert?
I believe we're the same age.
Did you graduate high school with him?
He went to a different high school, but yes,
Graduated at the same time.
correct.
And with regard to your familiarity with Chris Albert, can you explain to the jury how you became familiar with him and what your relationship with him has been?
I went to school with him, elementary school. We went to middle school. Then he transferred to a Catholic school. Then later in years, I began to work for Chris for D&E Pizza, delivering pizzas.
Okay. And approximately what ages were you when you were delivering pizzas for D&E Pizza and Chris Albert?
Up until I got married, 35,
So several years.
8 years.
8 years. Okay. And with regard to your interactions or knowledge of Kevin Albert, can you describe that?
Kevin Albert would be through D&E Pizza if he came in. Through the police department, would see him on details.
All right. And were you friendly with him?
Yes.
With regard to Brian Albert, could you describe your interactions or your relationship with him?
Again, through D&E Pizzas, delivering pizzas to his house. Cordial, polite, would say hello.
All right. So you're friendly with the Albert family?
Correct.
Now, back in January of 2022, where were you working?
I was working for the town of Canton.
In what department?
I was working in the sewer department.
Is that also called the water department?
Yes, water and sewer are combined.
And under what heading is that?
The DPW.
It's under the DPW, the Department of Public Works?
Correct.
Now, back in January of 2022, were you one of the regular snowplowers for the town of Canton?
Yes.
And directing your attention to January 28th of 2022, do you remember that day?
Yes.
What do you remember about that day, the 28th?
It was a potential blizzard. We had been given a start time.
All right. And when you say you had been given a start time, what does that mean?
It means that we're expected to be in our trucks at a certain time on our route.
Okay. And who gives those instructions back in January of 2022?
The supervisor for the Canton DPW.
And who was that at the time?
William Walsh.
Also known as Billy Walsh?
Yes.
Now, when were you called in to do plowing that evening or early morning?
We were told to be in by 2:30
And is that 2:30 a.m. or p.m.?
a.m.
Would that now be on January 29th?
Correct.
What time did you arrive at the DPW that early morning?
About 2:15.
When you got there, what did you need to do in order to go out plowing?
I needed to get into my truck and get that prepared to go out.
All right. And your truck, is there one that's specifically assigned to you when you plow?
Yes.
And does that truck have any particular nickname?
Yes, it's called the Franken truck.
And why is it called the Franken truck?
It is a truck that has a lot of different parts than what it's required. It's not parts that were made for that specific truck.
An older one?
Yes, it was a truck that was very uncomfortable at the beginning to use, so they tried to make it as comfortable as possible.
All right. And that particular truck, is it used for anything else other than snow plowing?
Yes, it's used for everyday use.
Now, so you get to the DPW at 2:15, you say that you get your truck ready. What does that entail to get your truck ready, and how long does it take?
It takes about 5 minutes. We just basically we need to make sure it's got enough gas in it, so we're not going to the route and running out of diesel fuel, which is not good. It's just basically going over the truck, making sure you have everything you need for that night.
And do you plow alone or with someone?
By myself.
Now, with regard to the visibility in your snowplow Franken truck, can you describe that for the jury, what you can see, what you can't see?
So the Franken truck has an air ride suspensions, an air ride seat. So the seat is raised so I can see over the hood, and I can see about 5 feet on either side of the passenger side, driver's side.
And when you say 5 feet, are you talking straight out from the...
From the windshield straight out.
All right. And what, if any, lighting do you have on Franken truck?
We have marking lights. We have 2 plow lights that are situated at the corners of the trucks, and it's up high. Illuminates very well. It's very well seen.
Okay. And with the extra set of lighting that you just described, how far can you see off to the sides, in front of you, and directly in front of you?
Probably 5 feet on the sides.
Well, so you already testified to that, 5 feet straight out.
Yeah.
But what about the sides going forward?
It's hard to decide to put into words, but I can see a real long distance. The visibility is fine. It is extremely. If you gave me probably 5, 10 feet, 15 feet out, maybe even further.
Okay. And with regard to the lighting, how much light does that give off?
Enormous amounts. It's almost driving with a spotlight.
And with regard to the air ride seats, what action did you take with those that particular night?
I raised it so that the bottom of my knees would hit the steering wheel.
And what, if any, obstructions, I should say, were in front of you that would prevent you from seeing what's in front of you or to the south?
Nothing.
All right. Now, do you have a specific route assigned to you?
Yes, I do.
Could you describe that route? And by the way, that specific route, was that the one that you were assigned on January 29th?
Correct.
Could you describe that for the jury?
Yes, it's a route that consists of Cedar Crest from Kings Road to Chapman Street and everything in between. There are a lot of streets I could name if you would like, but Fairview is one, Spring Lane is one, Cedar Crest, Kings Road. Those are pretty important roads that I would consider major roads on my route.
All right. Now, that particular night, if you got there at 2:15, what time do you think you were on the road by in Frankentrail?
I was on Cedar Crest about 2:30, 2:35.
Now, with regard to Cedar Crest, I would like to show you a map if I can. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
I've handed you a document. If you could just review that to yourself and then look up at me when you're done. Do you recognize what's depicted on that?
Yes,
What is it?
it is my plow route and consisting of streets that I plow.
All right. And to be fair, that's a portion of your plow route, right?
Correct.
There are other areas of the city that you plow?
This actually depicts my actual physical route.
Oh, okay, great. And that's a fair and accurate representation of the streets as they existed back in January of 2022?
Yes.
I would offer that, Your Honor.
Any objection, Mr. Lally?
No, Your Honor.
Okay.
6:51. Thank you.
And can I have permission to publish before the jury?
Sure.
Okay, now, you just testified that you got to Cedar Crest, I believe, you said 2:30 to 2:35 or so?
Correct.
All right, as we look at this exhibit on the screens, are you going from right to left or left to right on Cedar Crest when you first approach Fairview?
Right to left.
Okay, so you're going sort of from the upper right-hand corner of the diagram down Cedar Crest toward Fairview. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Could you take the laser pointer and just confirm that route for the jury? That's, okay. You see that's Fairview Road? Are you able to read that right?
I'm not, to be honest with you. I'm sorry.
Do you still have that map in front of you? Maybe that'll help you, Mr. Moore.
And actually, can I orient it so it's oriented just like that for him? Okay, that's how it's up on the screen.
Okay.
And by the way, I should have asked this, but is it in terms of you can't read the writing or you can't really see the outline of the streets?
Both.
Okay. Well, that's not going to help much. Okay, if we can have the lights back on. With the court's permission, can I leave that up on the screen while I ask a few more questions?
Sure, except we still can't see it.
Right, no, I know, but the jury can, so I think it would be helpful for them. All right, so you're coming down Cedar Crest, and would Fairview be on your left or your right when you first approach it?
When I first approach, it's on my left.
All right, now, do you take that left at that time?
No, I do not.
Why not?
At the time, I'm pushing snow, and we don't want to block any part of the road with snow, and taking a left would have left a row of snow. So I proceed to the end of Cedar Crest, do a cul-de-sac, and then head back up Cedar Crest.
All right, so there's a cul-de-sac at the end of Cedar Crest.
Correct.
Dead end.
Yes.
And you plow that?
Yes.
All right, so then when you come back up, is Fairview on your right or your left?
It is on my right.
What do you do?
I take that right and continue to plow.
Now, are you familiar with the Albert residence on Fairview Road?
Yes.
How did you become familiar with that?
Growing up in Canton, I knew where they lived.
Can I have exhibit 66 displayed with the court's permission?
Yes.
From where you're seated now, Mr. Loughren, are you able to see what's on the screen?
Yes.
And do you recognize that?
Yes.
What do you recognize?
I start in the middle and I angle right with the plow.
Now, I want to direct your attention to when you were, your truck was essentially perpendicular to the driveway. You see the driveway in Exhibit 66?
Yes, I do.
When you were perpendicular to the driveway, where were your headlights pointed?
In front of me, in front of the truck,
I'm sorry?
in front of the truck.
And what were you able to see of the front lawn of the Albert residence that very first time you passed?
I was able to see the entire front lawn.
And about what time was it that you first passed 34 Fairview Road?
About 2:45.
Now, as you continued along past the driveway, did you continue to have all of those headlights on in front of you?
Yes.
And as you continued along, what were you able to see of that front lawn? How much of it?
A very large portion, almost to the front steps.
And now, when you're plowing, where is your attention focused, sir?
My attention's focused in front of me and then to the sides.
Why would your attention be focused to the sides?
I am trying to be aware of any side traffic, any pedestrians, and God forbid, any animals.
And when you were passing the Albert residence, as you pass every home, what attention do you pay to the sides of the road and the lawns that are adjacent to the road?
I'm, again, making sure that there are no animals, no pedestrians, and making sure no one's coming out of their driveways, not expecting to see me.
And with regard to Exhibit 66, do you see the flagpole there?
Yes,
Is that something you had seen previously?
yes.
And when you made that first pass by that residence at 2:45 in the morning, sir, with your headlights on, what, if anything, did you see on the front lawn in the area of the flagpole?
I saw nothing.
If there had been a 6'2", 200-pound man lying in the snow there, would you have seen it?
Objection.
Sustained.
Now, once you pass the residence, where do you go?
I go to the end of Fairview.
And what street does that intersect with?
That intersects with Chapman Street.
If we have the previous exhibit, put back up with the court's permission.
Sure.
Okay. Do you still have the exhibit oriented the same way, sir?
Yes, I do.
Where's Chapman Street on the exhibit? Down the bottom, the top, or which?
Down the bottom.
And when you come to the end of Fairview with Cedar Crest in your rear now, right?
Correct.
Do you take a left or a right on Chapman?
I take a left
All right.
onto
And
Chapman.
once you take that left, what do you do?
I back up and then take a left to go back down Fairview.
So you're essentially doing almost a three-point turn in the road?
Correct.
All right. So now, do you go back down Fairview at that time?
Yes, I do.
And how far do you go down Fairview?
To the end, to Cedar Crest.
Now, at this point in time, you would also pass the Albert residence, correct?
Correct.
Would it be on your right or your left?
On my left.
Were you looking to the right and the left as you were coming down?
Yes.
How much light did your headlights illuminate of the Albert's front lawn as you were coming down from Chapman Street?
Coming down Chapman, just about the entire front lawn.
And again, with regard to that area around the flagpole, did you see anything on the lawn?
Nothing.
See a body?
No.
All right. Now, after you've done these two passes, sir, where do you go?
I then take a right on the Cedar Crest. I proceed up Spring Lane, come down Spring Lane, and then do the remaining of my route.
All right. How long did it take you before you wound up back at Cedar Crest and Fairview?
About 45 minutes.
So I think you had previously testified you made the first pass around 2:45.
Correct.
So would that put us at about 3:30 when you're about to make the second pass?
Objection.
Sustained. Ask it, Tiffany.
Sure, I'm sorry. What time was it, your best estimate in terms of when you would have approached Fairview and Cedar Crest again?
3:15 to 3:30.
All right. Now, when you approach that intersection again, are you approaching it such that Fairview would be on your left or your right this time?
On my left.
Same as last time.
Correct.
What do you do when you approach when you approach Fairview and it's on your left?
At that point, I have an option. I can go to the end of Cedar Crest, or I can turn around at a street, depending on how much snow I have on Fairview.
And with regard to the decision you made regarding that choice, what decision did you make on January 29th at 3?
Went all the way to the end.
Went all the way to the end of Cedar Crest.
Correct.
Same thing you did the first time.
Correct.
And then you come back up.
Correct.
Is Fairview on your right or your left at that time?
It would be on my right.
And did you take that right?
Yes, I did.
What, if anything, unusual did you see at that time?
At that point, I saw a Ford Edge on the side of the road,
Where was it parked on the side of the road?
in front of the Albert's house,
Where in front of the Albert's house?
by the flagpole.
And why was that unusual?
The Alberts never had cars that were parked out front, and it just stuck out as weird.
Now, what were the snow conditions like at that point? This is now, I think you said about 3:15 to 3:30.
It's starting to accumulate a lot quicker than what it was previous.
And what policies does the DPW have regarding cars parked in the street during a blizzard where there's plowing to be done?
We are to notify the supervisor. At that point, he will make a phone call to the police, and depending on if they can have the resident move it, it gets moved. If not, it gets towed.
And with regard to that policy, did you comply with that policy in those early morning hours?
No, I did not,
Why?
because I was being courteous to the Albert family.
Now, once you saw the Ford Edge parked on the side of the road near that flagpole, what did you do?
I had to go around the vehicle and as to not hit the vehicle.
All right, and probably obvious, but as you're approaching the vehicle, was it faced in the same direction that you were traveling?
Yes,
And so you're going around to the left or the right of the vehicle?
left.
And once, as you were approaching that vehicle, were you able to see on the right side of that vehicle, the lawn side?
Yes.
Did you see anything on the front lawn at that time?
Objection.
I'll allow it. Did you see anything?
No.
The lights were still on.
Correct.
All right, now, once you passed the vehicle, did anything attract your attention at all?
No.
All right, where do you go?
I go up to the end of Fairview and do the same process, take a left on Chapman and back down Chapman and take a left into Fairview again.
Once you come back down Fairview, do you pass the Albert residence again?
Correct.
Was there that car that you saw?
Correct.
It moved from when you passed it the first time.
No.
Were you able to see the front lawn of the Alberts in front of you as you were coming down Fairview towards Cedar Crest?
Not as much as the first time because the car blocked the view.
All right. Now, after that, how long did it take you before you came back to that area to plow again?
About 3 hours.
Do you recall about what time it was that you wound up back on Fairview?
I don't honestly recall what specific time.
Sure. Approximately, if it was 3:15 to 3:30, that second time, what would be your best estimate of the time when you came back?
I would say if I had to say, it would have been 5:30 up Fairview,
Okay.
and came back down, and then at that point I wasn't able to go further than Carriage Lane.
Okay, and when you say that you went up Fairview and came back down, you initially went from which side of Fairview?
Right side.
What would that be, the right side? I'm sorry. Would it be the Cedar Crest side or the,
It would have been Cedar Crest side.
coming from Cedar Crest and then you went up Fairview, came back down?
Came back down. As I'm going up, I am actually seeing first responders. And at that point, as I'm coming back down, the road's blocked at that point.
Okay. And when the road was blocked, what, if any, plowing were you able to do after that on Fairview?
I was able to go as far as Carriage Lane and then turn around.
Okay. And then I imagine it was several hours before you could plow again?
Before I could plow Fairview to the end of Cedar Crest, yes.
All right. Now, I'd like to direct your attention to February 15th of 2022. We were approached by an investigator who wanted to ask you questions about what you had seen and done on January 29th of 2022. Do
Yes.
you remember his name?
Yes.
What is it?
Paul?
And what was your understanding about whom Paul worked for?
Objection.
Ask it differently.
On On February 15th of 2022, were you ever approached by anybody in law enforcement, sir?
No.
So what was your understanding of Paul's job?
Objection.
I'll see Councilor Taiba.
You are unmuted.
Just a couple questions, Mr. Loughran.
Sure.
At any point in 2022, were you ever approached by any police investigators, sir?
No.
When was the first time that you were approached by the state police in this case? Do you recall?
I don't recall the actual date, but I do know.
Year?
Yes.
What year was that?
2023.
And do you recall the name of the investigator that approached you?
Mike Proctor and Sergeant, and I can't pronounce his name. I don't want to.
If I said Buchanan, would that ring a bell?
Yes, it is.
I have no further. Thank you, sir.
Okay, Mr. Lally.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
May I approach?
Yes.
Sir, I'm showing you a document that's already been marked with Exhibit 109. Just ask you to look at that and look up whenever you're finished, okay?
Yes.
You recognize that, sir?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize that to be?
These are the plow routes for the town of Canton.
And there's different numbers that are associated with different routes and different drivers assigned to those routes. Is that right?
Yes.
And if you look down at number 11, is that your route that you were talking about as far as the sort of portion of Cedar Crest neighborhood that you plow?
Yes.
And that's the route that you were assigned to on January 28th and January 29th of 2022, correct?
Yes.
Now, if I could ask, just as far as there's a certain way that you plow a route. Yeah. Excuse me. There's a certain way that you plow a road, correct?
Correct.
And when you're first plowing the road, you're sort of plowing the middle of the road, correct?
Correct.
And you do it in sort of a fashion that's referred to as ring road right. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can you explain to the jury what that is and sort of why you're plowing a road in that particular fashion when you're first starting to get out there with the plow?
So ring road to the right refers to the snow coming off the plow. It actually leaves a row of snow. We ring road to the right to prevent cars from having to go through the ring road to the left. If you go to the left, you've now put the ring road in the middle of the left-hand lane. So everything's to the right.
So everything's to the right because if there was a vehicle coming the other way, you'd be plowing into that vehicle. Is that correct?
Correct.
And your goal sort of when you're first getting out there to plow the roads is to sort of clear the middle of the roadway first, correct?
Correct.
So that's where your truck is when you first go out and plow the road, is you're sort of in the middle of the road near the double yellow line if there is one on that road.
Correct.
Okay. Now, this truck that you were driving, on that day, how long have you been assigned to that truck for plowing purposes?
I was assigned to that truck for probably 2 years, maybe longer.
Maybe longer. Were you driving that same truck in 2015?
No.
No? Okay, so you were driving a different truck at that point?
Correct.
Do you remember what kind of truck that was?
It was an F550 utility truck, pickup truck.
Similar in size or shape to the truck that you were driving that day?
No.
Now, you were asking questions about February 15, 2022, and you spoke to some investigator on that day, correct?
February 15th?
Yes, 2022. That Paul person you were talking
Yes,
about. Okay. And you met him at a skating rink, is that right?
correct.
And you said in a statement to him at that time that you would have seen a body on the front lawn or the sidewalk, is that right?
Correct.
Now, are you aware that there is no sidewalk on the same side of the street as 34 Fairview Road?
Correct.
Now, you mentioned some familiarity with the Alberts and with the Albert resident. Are there other people on that route that you're familiar with as far as where they live and who they are and all that?
Yes,
And how are you equally familiar with them, more familiar with them, or less familiar with them?
equally.
Equally? Now, familiarity with 34 Fairview Road, does that extend to sort of the lighting around that area?
No,
So do you know that there is actually no street lighting whatsoever in the area of the fire hydrant, the flagpole, or anywhere there for several hundred feet?
correct.
So you do know.
Yeah, I believe so, yes.
And so when you're driving by, you're looking for cars coming out of the driveway, cars coming in the opposite direction, people walking, is that correct?
Correct.
And you're trying to look for those objects so that you make sure that you don't strike them or hit them or anything like that, correct?
Correct.
And on February 15th, 2022, when you had this meeting with Paul, you told him about 3:30 or 4 a.m. Is when you saw this Ford Edge on Cedarcrest, correct?
Correct.
Now, in fact, when you first spoke to this individual named Paul, you didn't tell him it was a Ford Edge, correct?
No, told him it was Ford Edge.
You didn't tell him first that it was a small SUV?
No, told him it was Ford Edge.
Do you remember at any time Paul taking you on the parking lot and showing you different vehicles and asking you if those vehicles matched what vehicle you saw?
No, he wanted to make sure that what I was telling him was accurate. So he showed me what was a Ford Edge, but I had already told him it was a Ford Edge.
So he brought you out to the parking lot at the skating rink that you were meeting at, specifically showed you a Ford Edge and asked you if that was the vehicle.
Correct.
Now, do you know sort of the difference between, if you were to see a Ford Edge at nighttime in a snowstorm, the difference between a Ford Edge and a Jeep Cherokee?
Yes,
What's the difference?
the taillights in the back.
What about it?
Ford Edges are more round. The whole back facade is a little bit more round. A Jeep Cherokee are more square.
Now, what color was this SUV that you saw?
I can't tell you that. I am colorblind.
Can you tell, I'm just curious, sir, as far as your color blindness, can you tell whether or not an object is dark or light just by looking at it? Or you can't tell at all?
I can see things that are light. I can see things that are dark. I can see true colors. I can't see shades of true colors.
And so from what you saw, was this light or dark?
Light.
Now, you told this Paul individual on February 15th that the SUV that you saw was exactly where Mr. O'Keefe's body was found, correct?
Correct.
How do you know where his body was found?
I told him specifically if he was looking at the door, the front door, it was about 3 feet to the left of the door. And with
To the left of the door?
looking at the front of the door to the left of the door, pushing it up Fairview.
So if he wrote in his report that you told him that the vehicle was exactly where the body was found, that would not be true?
Objection.
No, I'll allow that.
Could you repeat that question, please?
If he wrote in his report that you told him that the SUV was exactly where the body was found, that would not be true, would it not?
That would be true. The car was to the left of the door, putting it in front of the flagpole.
My question for you, sir, is how do you know where Mr. O'Keefe's body was found? At any point in time, did you see Mr. O'Keefe's body on the front lawn?
No.
So how do you know where Mr. O'Keefe's body was found?
Through police reports, police interviews, stuff that was posted on the media.
So you've seen police reports in the media?
Well, not the police reports, I'm sorry, but what was said during on the news.
So what you've heard on the news, not necessarily what you saw or what you know yourself, correct?
Could you repeat that question, please?
You're recounting sort of what you've heard or saw on the news, and so this doesn't come from your personal knowledge or anything about where Mr. O'Keefe was, correct?
Correct.
Now, you also spoke with some other individuals in May of 2023, correct?
Correct.
Now, did you tell those individuals that you actually came in, and when you say came in, you come into sort of the main sort of hub or the shed on Boulevard Street, correct?
Correct. We punch in.
That's where you punch in and you pick up your truck and you sort of do your checkpoint around the truck and then you go out and plow.
Correct.
Now, you were plowing on this street. Was there any other sort of subcontractor or anything else that was working, plowing the roads as well?
Yes,
And who was that?
it was by the yard landscaping.
And so they assist as far as the plow route is concerned, and they go around and they plow things on the same route that you were describing, correct?
Correct.
Now, these other people that you talked to in May of 2023, did you tell them at that time that you actually came in around 11:30 p.m. to 12 a.m.?
I don't remember that.
You don't remember that, or you didn't tell them?
I don't remember that.
So that would be a significant difference, 11:30 p.m. to 12 a.m. from 2:15 a.m. and 2:30 a.m., correct?
Correct.
Now, you also indicated to them at that time that you went past Fairview at approximately 12 a.m. and 2 a.m., correct?
I never did 12, but it was definitely 2:30,
So if they wrote
2:40,
that in the report, that
2:35.
would be inaccurate as well, correct?
Sustained, and only one person can talk at a time.
I apologize. I'm sorry, sir. Please continue and finish your answer.
I didn't hear the question.
Okay. Well, let me ask it again. So as far as if that was contained within a report regarding that conversation in May of 2023, that you went past Fairview Road or went down Fairview Road at 12 a.m. and 2 a.m., that would not be accurate, correct?
Sustained, ask it differently.
Did you go down Fairview Road at 12 a.m. and 2 a.m.?
No,
If that were contained in a report of your conversation you had in May of 2023, would that be accurate?
Sustained, ask it differently, Mr. Riley.
Now, as far as that conversation that you had in May of 2023, did you tell those individuals that you saw the vehicle around 1:30 or 2 in the morning?
again, I don't remember ever saying that.
Is that accurate as far as whether or not you told them that?
Again, I don't remember saying that.
Did you see a vehicle around 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning?
I wasn't on the road at 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning.
Correct. Now, do you also recall telling those individuals that Fairview Road was blocked off by cruisers at about 3 or 3:30 in the morning?
Again, that would have been incorrect.
You recall saying that in May of 2023?
I do not.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes. Show counsel.
So I'm going to ask you to read, showing you a document, I'm going to ask you to read this paragraph, and this paragraph to yourself, okay? And then whenever you're done, just please look, okay? Are you finished, sir?
Yes.
May I approach this retrieval?
Yes.
Mr. Loughran, after having reviewed that, as your memory refreshed as to that conversation you had in May of 2023,
No, it does not.
do you still, after reading that, don't recall telling anybody in May of 2023 that you came in around 11:30 p.m., 12 a.m. on the 28th, 29th?
I never came in at 11:30, 12:30 at night. It was 2:30 calling.
You don't recall indicating to anyone in May of 2023 that you went past Fairview at 12 a.m. and 2 a.m.?
Correct, never did.
And you don't recall telling anyone that you saw the car around 1:30 or 2 a.m.? Is that correct?
Correct,
And you don't recall telling anybody that the part of Fairview containing 34 Fairview was blocked off at 3 or 3:30 a.m., correct?
correct.
Now, if the part of Fairview that you were talking about, so you didn't say that in May of 2023, because at 3 or 3:30, the roadway wasn't blocked off, correct?
Correct,
It was blocked off sometime around 6 a.m., correct?
correct.
And so if you had said that the roadway was blocked off at 3 or 3:30 in the morning, and it was actually 6, then when you saw the vehicle, would have been off a little bit as well, correct? Objection.
Sustained.
Seeing the car at 1:32 in the morning, with the road being blocked off at 3 or 3:30 in the morning, if the road's blocked off at 6 a.m., then that actually would have been, you saw a car sometime around 5 a.m., correct? Objection.
Sustained.
Sure you didn't see a black Lexus SUV in front of the house at 34 Fairview Road around 5 a.m.?
No,
Now, you also were asked some questions and you spoke to some troopers in August of 2023, correct?
correct.
And County Canton, they have a parking ban in Canton, is that correct?
Correct.
That goes from November until April.
Correct.
Now, part of your plow route is a road called Tippy Cart, correct?
Correct.
Where is Tippy Cart in relation to Fairview?
It is on top of it's on the right side of Cedar Crest. It would put it 2 streets before Fairview.
And at some point, when you were plowing on Tippy Cart that night, you actually hit a basketball hoop, is that right?
Yes.
And did you call that in?
Yes.
And as a result of that, what happened with the basketball hoop after that?
Nothing. The point was to make sure I was covered, basically. That's why I notified my supervisor that I hit the basketball hoop.
And about what time was that you hit the basketball hoop?
I don't recall.
Is it closer to when you started, closer to when you ended?
I don't recall. I don't recall what time.
So you don't recall anything specific about that time, correct?
No, just that I know I hit the basketball net.
And obviously, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth or anything, sir, but you didn't intentionally hit the basketball hoop, correct?
Correct.
So you hit it because you didn't see it, correct?
No, I was attempting to avoid the net by going around it. And the machine had a different size body than what it originally had. And I underestimated when I was going around that I need to be wider.
So you misjudged the distance, is that fair to say?
Yes.
May we approach, Your Honor?
Okay.
You are unmuted.
Now, sir, at some point prior to coming in here and testifying today, have you met with Mr. Yannetti?
Yes.
How many times?
Twice.
And when were those times?
Tuesday and Saturday.
Tuesday and Saturday, when, sir?
Tuesday of last week, Saturday of last week.
And this Paul person that you spoke of before, was that person present there as well?
Yes.
And did you make note of Paul writing anything down or Mr. Yannetti writing anything down while you were talking to them?
No.
And as far as you're aware, there's no reports that were generated from any of those conversations or any of those meetings. Is that correct?
Correct.
So, sir, I'm correct if I say that you're sure about every time that you went down Fairview Road and everything that you saw going down Fairview Road, but you're completely unaware of the time that you ran into and struck a basketball hoop that night. Is that correct?
Objection.
Sustained. You can ask it differently.
You're sure about all the times that you went down Fairview Road?
Yes.
And you have no idea what time that you went on Tippy Cart and you struck the basketball hoop. Is that right?
If you ask me to guess, I can guess for you.
I'm not asking you to guess, sir. I'm asking you not to know.
I don't recall exactly what time I hit that net.
Nothing further.
All right. Anything, Ms.
Just very
Giannetti?
briefly, there's just one question I want to make sure that we understand what's going on.
So no statements, right? Just ask a question.
I always do that. I apologize, Your
Okay.
Honor. You were asked a question by Mr. Lally. Are you sure you didn't see a black Lexus at around 5 a.m. in front of Fairview? And your answer was no. And my question to you is, does that mean that you're not sure if you saw one or that you didn't see?
Objection.
I'll allow that.
I did not see a Lexus at 5 a.m.
At any point that night while you were plowing,
No,
did you see a black Lexus in front of 34 Fairview?
no.
Thank you, sir.
Very briefly, based on your timeline, were you on Fairview Road at 5 a.m.?
Yes.
How so, sir?
It was about 3 hours after the last time I went on it. So it put me, I was last on it at about 3:45, about 5:30.
You were on the road about 2:45 and you said it took you about 45 minutes to sort of do the loop and come back, correct?
Correct.
And from the time that you were on there, including the time that it took you to plow and the time that it took you to do all of those things along the route, you're coming back to Fairview Road at 45 minutes later, or it took you 45 minutes to do the route?
It was about 45 minutes.
And so from there, 45 minutes from what time are we talking that you were first there? Said about 2:45 or so?
About 3:30. With some,
3:30. Okay,
Yeah.
so about 3 hours after that would then be about 6:30, correct?
it was about, I mean, I know I went up there and saw the first responders coming down. And when
What I'm asking is, you had testified that you may, or you were on Fairview Road around 5 a.m. If you're not returning for 3 hours later, and that's about 6:30 from 3:30, correct?
Correct.
So then you were not on Fairview Road at 5 a.m., correct?
I was. The time that it took me to do what I needed to do put me there about 5. So when I'm coming down Cedar Crest from doing my route, I am constantly looking at Fairview to make sure that is considered a main road. So we need to take that as a priority. So if it's a lot of snow on that road, I'm going to go turn around and do the road so that the road is available. So first responders have access to that road.
So, sir, what I'm saying is you testified, your timeline, that you
Yep.
came down there around 6:30 in the morning, correct?
My timeline was 5:30.
So 3 hours
5:30?
after 3:30.
It was 45 minutes.
45 minutes was from 2:45 to get you to 3:30. Then 3 hours later, it's
It was
6:30, correct?
It was about 45 minutes because I didn't get a lot of time. At that time, the snow was coming down at a significant rate, and I needed to make sure Fairview was kept clear. So I come down and I check. So I have the streets are all around Fairview. They're 5-10 minutes around Fairview. So the furthest street from Fairview is Kings Road.
So my question is, are you talking about coming down Fairview, or are you talking about being on another road and looking at Fairview?
Coming down Cedar Crest, looking at Fairview.
Despite that timeline that you gave her.
I am always looking at that street.
Nothing.
All right, Mr. Loughran, you are all set, sir.
Thank you.
I'm going to move and ask Dr. Marie Russell to join us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Step for me.
You solemnly swear the evidence of the court and jury in the case now and here, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you. Take a seat.
All right, whenever you're ready, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Russell, could you please, in a loud, clear voice, state your name and spell your last name for us?
Hi, Dr. Marie Russell, Russell.
Doctor, what do you do for a living?
I'm an emergency room forensic pathologist, just recently retired.
And prior to your retirement, what was your position?
The immediate position before retirement was chief medical executive at for the state of California at the Corcoran State Prison.
And
So, Dr. Russell, I'm going to ask you to keep your voice up, okay?
Yes. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
there's a couple of air conditioners in here. Just keep your voice as loud as possible. What is, in fact, an emergency physician?
An emergency physician is a medical specialist who has completed a residency, internship residency, residency in the field of emergency medicine, which is a field which involves taking care of patients that are sick or injured and go to the emergency room.
Can you tell us what your education, starting with your education, training, and background is that qualifies you as an emergency physician, starting with your education all the way back to college?
Okay. Well, I have completed at least 16 years of formal education beyond high school, which includes college, and then 4 years of medical school, then 4 years of emergency medicine residency and internship, and then 4 years of pathology residency, which includes 2 years of anatomic and 2 years of forensic pathology. And then I treated, I've taken a bunch of other courses and attended seminars.
Let's start with your college. Where'd you go to college? Where'd you start?
Okay. MIT. I did my first year at MIT where I took my pre-med courses.
And then what happened after that? By the way, about what year was that?
Oh, that was in 1972 to 73.
Where did you go after MIT?
So what happened? I was interested in becoming a doctor, and so I took the pre-med courses, and then subsequent to that first year, I learned that my mother had metastatic breast cancer, and so I decided to go home to New York to be with her. After that, she subsequently passed away, and I returned to Massachusetts and decided to take advantage of the time off from school to investigate my interest in law enforcement. And I subsequently became a police officer here in Massachusetts.
So following MIT, did you go to a police academy?
I did.
Which police academy did you go to?
I went to the Boston Police Academy.
And did you end up becoming a sworn officer?
Yes.
For how long?
I did it for 7 years full time.
And what department did you work for?
I worked for the City of Malden Police Department.
What years was that, if you could give me a range?
From 1977 to 1984.
During the time that you were a Malden police officer, did you also go to school and continue your formal education?
I did.
Describe that for us, please.
Well, I took specialized courses through the Massachusetts Criminal Justice Training Council.
Objection, move to strike.
All right, so I'm going to strike that. Jurors, disregard that.
Let me ask you this way. I don't want to get into the specifics.
Okay.
While you were a police officer, did you also take formal education to further your medical training or your college?
Yes, I did.
That's what I'm interested in.
Okay.
Tell us about that.
Oh, yeah. So I attended Northeastern University part-time and received a Bachelor of Science degree in psychology.
After you got your degree in psychology from Northeastern, did you go on to continue your education in medicine?
I did. I attended medical school at the University of Massachusetts Medical School from 1983 to 1987.
Also known as UMass?
Yes.
Did you ultimately end up with a medical degree?
Did. Doctor.
After you became a doctor, did you engage in a residency?
Yes.
What years were the residency, that first residency?
So the first residency was from 1987 to 1991, and that was in Los Angeles at the Los Angeles County University of Southern California Medical Center.
Is that also known as LAUSC?
It was at the time, yes.
And that's associated with the University of Southern California Medical Center, is that right?
Yes.
After your first residency, by the way, what was your first residency in? What was the subspecialty?
So it was in emergency medicine, and USC is a very large trauma center.
How would you describe the size and volume of the USC Trauma Center?
Well, it's one of the busiest in the United States.
After your first residency in emergency medicine, Did you do a second residency?
Yes.
What was the subspecialty in that second residency?
So I did a 2 years in anatomic pathology and 2 years as a fellow in forensic pathology at the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office.
So you did 2 full residencies after you became a doctor, is that right?
That is correct.
What's the difference? I don't want to go into great detail, but what's the difference between an emergency physician and, for instance, the residency that you did in pathology, both anatomic pathology and forensic pathology? What are the differences?
Well, generally, the emergency physician treats live patients, and the spectrum of injuries can be wide, or illnesses can be wide, and the forensic pathologist treats or deals with deceased patients generally.
Did you become a fellow at the LA Coroner's Office following your second residency?
No, that was part of the second residency.
Understood. Describe that fellowship.
So that was 2 years of full-time work at the LA Coroner's Office under the supervision of very experienced medical examiners. And what I did was I did autopsies, every day, 1 or 2 autopsies every day, attended conferences, and read journal articles, etc. It was a very formalized education.
Did you also become, at some point, a professor or an assistant professor at LAUSC, the medical center side, the university side?
Yes. So while I was doing the forensic pathology and anatomic pathology residencies during the daytime, I worked as a full-time ER doc supervisor in the capacity of an assistant professor in the evenings.
Did you also become an adjunct professor at Cal State Los Angeles, California State Los Angeles?
Yes.
That a separate university?
Yes.
And you had separate responsibilities as a professor in that role?
Yes.
Were you also teaching legal medicine and forensic medicine in that capacity?
That is correct. It was a master's level program.
How long were you an ER physician in total and an attending physician for Los Angeles County USC Medical Center?
29 years in total. 4 of those were in training and the rest were as a supervisor. And
Of your 29 years, 25 of your 29 years, you were supervising others,
correct.
meaning other doctors,
Other doctors, yes.
teaching other doctors,
Yes.
and teaching medical students.
Yes, and seeing their cases. Once they examined the patient, they would present their case or tell me about the case, and then I would go in and see those patients in addition to my patients.
That was my next question, doctor. In addition to teaching, were you also specifically assessing, diagnosing, and treating patients of your own?
Yes, not all the time. Some shifts I didn't have to do that, but much of the time, yes.
For the bulk of the 29 years that you were an ER doc, an emergency physician, in other words, were you also attending to patients as well?
Yes.
Once you left that fellowship with the LA Coroner's Office, did you remain active in any way or connected to the Los Angeles Coroner's Office?
Yes, so I would attend their weekly conferences when I could, when I was available to do so, and I also consulted on some cases with them. So if they had something, director of the USC Center for Life Support Training, that involved teaching other doctors life support courses such as advanced cardiac life support, or that we teach the surgeons advanced trauma life support.
I'm sorry?
Oh, go ahead.
Were you also a director for their quality improvement in the early 2000s?
Yes, for the emergency medicine department.
What was the reason for the quality improvement program, if you will, for LAUSC?
Well, for any program, it's ideal to have a quality improvement component, because what you want to do is look at cases that were treated and see if there were any errors, and if so, correct the errors, teach the doctors that involved, what went wrong, and try to make systemic improvements or teaching improvements to prevent those errors from occurring in the future.
Were you teaching basically best practices for emergency room physicians as well as trauma physicians and surgeons?
Yes, we tried.
And you were the director of that program, correct?
Yes.
Did you also become the director of LAUSC Jail Medical Services?
Yes.
What is the connection or the tether between the jail system in Los Angeles and LAUSC Medical Center?
Well, LAC Jail Ward was established about 70 years ago, and it was a place that the officers from various agencies, such as LA Sheriffs, LAPD, California Highway Patrol, or any of the municipalities around, could bring people that they arrested who were in need of medical care.
So the jail system, very large jail system, I'm guessing, in Los Angeles, correct?
Correct, yes.
There have to be medical attendants to that jail system, correct?
Yes.
And you became the director of the jail medical services for the entirety of that system?
For the hospital component of it.
Understood. In California, you're obviously licensed in California.
Yes,
There is a state medical board in California, correct?
yes,
And did you ever do any work with that state medical board?
yes. I worked with them for about 7 years part-time as a regular employee embedded in their enforcement unit. And what that involved was examining cases that were referred to the medical board because of substandard care or illegal activities of the providers. It was for physicians and physician assistants that we regulated.
What was your title with the state medical board for those purposes?
The title was medical consultant. That was the official title.
Okay. And then before your retirement, by the way, what years were you the medical consultant for, or a medical consultant for the state board in California?
But gee, I think from 2009 to 2016. I think those were the years. I'm not positive. I did that. That was a job I was doing when I was doing the LA County USC Medical Center job too. It was an extra job.
So you didn't stop working as a physician, an emergency physician at LAUSC to take that position?
No.
You just consulted with them?
I did it once a week, 1 day a week.
Got it. And then with regard to one of your last positions that you held, did you become the chief medical executive for the California State Prison, Corcoran?
Yes.
Tell me about that position and the years that you held that position.
So that was from 2018 to 2023. And as the chief medical executive, I was the supervisor of all the doctors and nurse practitioners that provided care to the inmates.
And obviously the California prison system is a very large prison system.
Very.
Doctor, are you board certified in emergency medicine?
Yes.
Are you a member of the National Association of Medical Examiners?
Yes, I'm actually fellow status, which is higher than member.
Are you a member of the American Academy of Forensic Science?
Yes, again, I'm a fellow there.
Which also is an advancement above just being a member?
Correct.
Have you ever published in the area, and now I'm going to get very specific, have you ever published peer-reviewed articles and done research in the area of animal bites and scratches?
Yes.
Did you author or co-author a peer-reviewed article named Managing Law Enforcement Dog Bites in the ER?
Yes.
About what year was that?
It was in the 1990s.
Late 1990s, 1996, does that
Yes.
sound right? Did you also author or co-author an article called Law Enforcement Canine Dog Bites, Injuries, Complications, and Trends?
Yes.
So given those articles, did you study specifically dog bites, dog wounds on the human body?
Yes, I have a very strong interest in wounds in general, and I have a strong interest in dog bites in particular.
During the course of your career, your professional experience, how many patients would you say you've seen or treated with animal injuries, including bites and scratches?
It's very hard to estimate, but between my own practice and the residents that I supervised, it was, I'm sure, well over 500 and could possibly be double that.
Could be up as many as 1,000.
It could be, yes.
Have you qualified as an expert in emergency medicine in the past?
Yes.
You qualified as an expert in the area of forensic pathology and wounds in the past?
Yes.
Is that both in federal and state courts?
Yes.
Doctor, were you asked to review certain materials related to this case in furtherance of coming to some opinions and conclusions about injuries suffered by John O'Keefe specific to his right arm?
Yes.
What did you review in coming to your opinions and conclusions?
Well, I reviewed hospital records and pictures taken of him in the hospital, when he was in the hospital. I reviewed autopsy records, the autopsy report, and photographs taken during and before the autopsy. I reviewed, let's see, I reviewed reviewed the grand jury testimony of the autopsy pathologist. I reviewed affidavit of Dr. Sheridan. I reviewed the town of Canton dog bite reports about regarding incidents.
Action, may we approach?
Yes.
a photograph and ask you very quickly, have you seen this before?
Yes.
Is this one of a number of photographs that you reviewed in furtherance of your evaluation of this case?
Yes, it is.
I'd like to just focus your attention on this for just a quick second and ask you, does this accurately reflect the wounds or injuries that you saw on John O'Keefe's right arm in coming to your opinions and conclusions?
Yes, it reflects the injuries that I saw in photographs.
All right. Now, based on your review of all of the data that you've talked about, all of the information that you were given and reviewed, what is your opinion or conclusion about how these injuries were sustained?
I believe that these injuries were sustained by an animal, possibly a large dog, because of the pattern of the injuries.
Could you describe for the jurors, please, on what you base that opinion?
Yes. Well, may I use the?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. There's a number of patterns here. There on the upper part of the arm, there's parallel lines, and those were inflicted by either teeth or claw marks. So there's a number of patterns that could be teeth or claw mark. And so this is one set right here. This is the one further down, closer to the elbow, is another set of parallel marks. Again, probably most likely from teeth marks. And the reason I say that is, in addition to the parallel marks up here, down here, there's also little punctate, incomplete puncture marks here, little round marks right there that were inflicted by the actual point of the tooth.
Okay, that was my question. What relevance does that have to your determination that this was likely caused by an animal?
Yes, and I can explain in a moment the various kinds of wounds that animals can inflict. But going on with the picture first. So then down right at the elbow, there's another different series of marks that again have linear abrasions up where the pointer is, and then down below some punctate, superficial, round, small abrasions, again representing upper and lower teeth, in my opinion. And then there are some irregular wounds down just below the elbow. And these are all, by the way, on the exterior surface, or what we call what doctors would call the posterior surface of the arm, which is the part of the arm that would sustain defensive type wounds. So if someone were to protect themselves.
Objection.
So it's sustained. Next question.
Sure. Doctor, if I can ask another question. Just to clear up what you said a little earlier about some of the wounds close to the elbow, is it your opinion that both the top teeth and bottom teeth could have created some or all of the injuries on that elbow area?
Yes.
Okay, so in other words, instead of the mouth going all the way around the arm, the top and bottom jaw could have situated itself on this portion that we're seeing, the posterior part of the arm?
Yes, and in this case, the animal did not get a good enough contact.
Objection. Move to strike.
So I'm going to strike that, ask a different question.
Have you seen contact wounds where the animal, a dog for instance, gets a very solid purchase on the leg, arm, part of the body?
Yes.
Okay, is that this or is this something else?
Something else.
Describe that.
Well, an animal inflicts injuries. The type of injury depends in part on the actual type of contact and how much force is applied by that animal, in addition to any relative movement between the animal and the victim in this case. So, for instance, in the law enforcement dog bites, many of...
Objection.
Right. So the nature, is it notice? What's one word?
May we approach?
Okay.
You are unmuted.
May I, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. Without getting any specifics about police canines,
Okay.
does this appear, does the pattern of injuries that you see appear consistent with an animal or a large dog?
Yes.
Does the number of injuries that you see here relegated to just the right arm, is that also consistent with an animal or large dog?
Yes, it can be.
Is the direction of the injuries, or the consistency of the direction of the injuries, or the parallel injuries, is that also consistent with an animal or large dog attack?
Yes.
Based on everything that we've discussed today, Doctor, is it your opinion, based on a reasonable degree of medical certainty, that these injuries were from an animal attack, possibly a large dog?
Yes.
Can I have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
That's all I have at this time.
Okay.
May we approach?
Okay.
You are unmuted.
Did you?
Sure.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, sir.
Now, testified that you're certified in emergency medicine, is that correct?
That is correct.
And you're not, nor were you ever certified in forensic medicine, is that correct?
That is correct.
Pathology.
Correct.
And when was the last time that you worked at a coroner's office?
1995 in terms of doing autopsies. Yes.
Now, when was it that you first spoke to anyone from defense counsel in regard to your coming in here and testifying today?
May 17th.
Doctor, I am going to ask you to keep your voice up.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
May 17th, 2024.
May 17th of this year, is that right?
2024.
So about 6 weeks after this trial began.
I don't know when the trial began.
Now, as far as who reached out to who?
I reached out to a district attorney that I worked with with the LA coroner's office.
And then somehow that person put you in touch with Mr. Jackson, is that right?
Yes.
And was that also on May 17th?
17th and 18th, yes.
So I'm sorry, 17th or the 18th? Which one was it that you spoke with Mr. Jackson?
I didn't speak to him.
You did not speak to him?
Not speaking, not verbal. There was some email communication or text communication.
You communicated with him. Was
Yes.
it on the 17th or the 18th?
Yes, both, I think.
Both. Okay. And when did you render this opinion as far as what you testified to here today?
Shortly after he sent me the files.
Now, in regards to those files, you testified in this court a couple days ago, correct?
I did.
You were under oath at that point, is that correct?
Excuse me?
You were under oath at that point, is that correct?
Yes.
And when you were asked specifically what materials that you had reviewed, you included a number of items, which you did not include anything about a Dr. Sheridan affidavit, anything about a UC Davis report, or anything about any sort of bite history for a canine that lived or resided at 34 Fairview Road, correct?
That's correct, because I hadn't reviewed them then.
And so since then, 2 days ago, now you've reviewed them, correct?
Yes, I became aware that those files existed, yes.
You became aware of those files? Were they not sent to you previously?
No, I think there were technical difficulties regarding me and the computer and downloading from Dropbox. And so, yeah, so they were, I think they were sent to me, but I think I didn't open them.
Now, with reference to these technical difficulties, did you ever express any of those technical difficulties, or, hey, I can't see the whole file, or there's other things in here that are listed that I can't look at?
No, I wasn't aware.
And so with regard to, as far as your reaching out or contact in regard to this case, how did that come about?
I saw an article, I believe it was in the Boston Globe, regarding this case. And I didn't, initially I didn't think anything of it. Then I saw an article that indicated that there was some...
I didn't tell you anything about anything any article indicated. You saw an article in the Boston Globe about
Yes.
this case, is that right?
Yes,
And how did you come upon it? Do you have a subscription to the Boston Globe?
I did at the time, yes.
You did at the time. What time was this?
In May,
May of 2024?
yes.
And how long had you had a subscription to the Boston Globe at the time that you saw this?
It was either a 6-month subscription or a year, I don't remember.
And that was the first time that you had seen anything about that?
First time I paid attention to anything like that, yes.
Now, again, you had testified here just a couple of days ago when I asked you questions about this, is that right?
Yes,
It wasn't in your testimony just a couple of days ago that the subscription was actually for a year or 18 months. You
No.
Remember, not 6 months, a year.
So only one person can talk at a time. So was that your testimony, doctor?
No, I don't believe so. I believe that I said it was a 6 months description or 12 months description.
In any event, you saw something. That's the first time that you recall seeing anything in the media about this case was in May of 2024?
It was the first time that I recall reading anything about it. Correct.
Now, did you write a report in regard to your opinions that you've testified here today?
No.
And I asked you that a couple days ago as well.
Yes.
Okay, so in the
Sir.
last couple of days, you've had time to review UC Davis report, Dr. Sheridan's affidavit, and any sort of dog bite history, but you haven't had a chance to write a report.
Objection.
Sustained to that form.
You haven't written a report, correct?
That's correct.
Why not?
I haven't been asked to write a report, sir.
Now, did you ever look at anything related to Mr. O'Keefe's head injury?
I looked at
Objection.
Sustained.
You want to make the approach briefly?
Yes.
You are unmuted.
May I have a moment, John?
Yes.
Now, doctor, you testified that you had some familiarity with areas of forensic science. You're on some boards, things of that nature. Is that correct?
yes.
And as a result of that, or any other work experience, are you familiar with a NAS report from 2008?
Not with that limited information, no.
You're not aware of a report issued by the National Association of Forensic Science in 2008, which specifically has a section dealing with.
So I'm going to see you both at sidebar again.
That recommendation.
You're not aware of any findings in the NAS report that has led to questioning of the value and scientific objectivity of such evidence.
For specifically identifying a bite mark to an individual that might have inflicted the bite mark, I think that's what that applies to.
Okay, I'm not asking, again, this is a report. Are you familiar with it or are you not familiar?
I'm familiar with a summary or a abstract of a report that indicates that forensic ontology is not is deemed not reliable when it comes to that particular narrow aspect of forensic ontology.
And so you're not familiar with it also, talking about sample data and collection, analyses of these, interpretation and reporting of results. You're not familiar with those areas of the NAS report as well?
What specifically, do you have a specific question about that, or?
First question was whether or not you're familiar with the report. You indicated that you weren't.
I did not read the report.
From the report.
Mr. Lally, let the witness answer one question at a time, one speaker at a time. Doctor, can you answer that question?
Sure. I did not read that report.
Now, you had written some articles that you were asked about in reference to dog bites, canine dog bites in the emergency department. Is that correct?
Yes, co-authored.
Something that you published or authored or co-authored sometime in the late 1990s. Is that right?
Correct.
And in that instance, you talk about law enforcement dogs and a bite in a hole technique, correct?
Yes.
Now, part of the reason in writing that article had to do with sort of the applied forces and the unique spectrum of injuries from those kind of dog bites. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that spectrum of injuries would include deep puncture wounds. Is that right?
They can, yes.
Severe crush injuries. Is that right?
Correct.
Large tissue avulsions and lacerations. Is that right?
Yes.
Wounds necessitating surgical debridement. Is that right?
Yes.
Bony injuries ranging from cortical violations to displaced fractures. Is that right?
Yes.
Neurovascular damage. Is that right?
Yes.
And other wounds at high risk for infection, correct?
Correct. But we also put a disclaimer in that article.
I'm not asking you about any disclaimer.
Okay.
I'm asking you about that's what the type of injuries that you were looking at. Is that correct?
Yes, but we saw a skewed population.
Did you skew population in the study? Is that correct?
What we saw the worst of the worst.
Or no? Did
Yes.
you skew the population in the study?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
The population.
Did we skew the? Did we skew? No, we reported on all the ones that presented to the emergency room for care. However, a lot of dog bites don't present to the emergency room.
And so from the different cases that you report on within that article, are there any of those cases in which there is injuries to just one aspect of one part of the human body for the victims of dog attacks or dog bites in those cases?
There may have been. That's a summary of the 700 cases, more than 700 cases.
So is it normal in any kind of animal attack for injuries to occur on just one side of one arm of the person that's being attacked, clawed, or bitten?
There are many people who are bitten or scratched.
I'm asking
Only-
if it's normal, ma'am. That's all
Okay,
I'm asking.
so hold on, Mr. Jackson. Mr. Lally, ask a question, wait for the answer, and then start a next question. Do not interrupt the witness.
I apologize, Your Honor. I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm asking for an answer responsive to the question.
So ask a question and ask it in a manner that you get a responsive answer.
Dr. Russell, is it your testimony that it's normal in an animal attack for injuries to occur on just one side of one arm and nothing else, anywhere else on that person's body?
It can be, yes.
I'm not asking if it can be. I'm asking, is that normal?
I can't say.
Sustained, you have to ask the question differently.
So from your observations, you looked at various photographs of Mr. O'Keefe, is that right?
I did.
Did you observe any injuries on any other part of his body that you would attribute to an animal attack, whether it be claw marks or bite marks or anything else?
No,
So nothing on his left arm, correct?
nothing that identified as a dog bite or
Nothing on
scratch.
his legs, is that correct?
That's correct.
Nothing on his torso, is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, you say an animal attack, possibly a large dog, correct?
Yes.
Can you say what type of animal left these marks that you attribute to an animal attack?
Not with 100% certainty, no.
Can you say where physically Mr. O'Keefe was located when those the animal attack supposedly occurred?
Objection.
Can you say that?
No.
Okay.
Can you say when Mr. O'Keefe purportedly sustained these injuries from an animal attack?
Well, to a certain degree, yes. Before it was before death, but not long enough to have a big inflammatory reaction. So yes. So minutes to hours before death.
Minutes to hours before death, but at some point before death, correct?
Yes.
Can you say anything about the breed of dog?
No.
Can you say anything about whether it occurred inside the house, outside of the house, anything like that?
No.
As far as some of the different things that you reviewed over the course of your testimony, or the preparation of your testimony, both prior to Tuesday and between Tuesday and today, any of those things contain any forensic reports or phone examinations or anything else related to this case?
Could you repeat that? I didn't, what kind of examination?
Any
Phone?
of the materials that you reviewed, whether it be prior, sometime between May 17th and Tuesday, or anything that you reviewed between Tuesday and today, did any of those materials that you reviewed contain any sort of forensic reports or anything beyond the UC Davis?
Yes, I saw a photograph.
You saw photographs. And to that point, you never actually saw Mr. O'Keefe's body, correct? You just saw photographs?
That's true.
And with respect to the UC Davis report, as far as canine DNA, are you aware that the results of that were that there was no canine DNA on Mr. O'Keefe, on swabbings that were sent to the UC Davis lab?
I'm going to allow it.
Yes, but there was clothing in between.
Okay, but the swabbings came from the clothing with tears in the
Okay.
clothing in the same area as the injuries, correct?
Okay.
Do you know that or no?
I couldn't tell if they came from the wound or the clothing. I thought that they came from the clothing, but
You couldn't tell by reviewing the report whether or not swabbings came from clothing or from Mr. O'Keefe's body.
I know the clothing was sent to the laboratory,
You know the clothing was sent to what laboratory?
to the DNA laboratory.
To UC Davis?
Oh, I don't know that. No, I'm sorry.
You are aware that that came back as far as negative for any canine DNA, correct?
That's correct.
Now, as far as the injuries that you observed, your testimony is that both the top teeth of whatever animal this is and the bottom teeth of whatever animal this is both made contact with only the top of Mr. O'Keefe's arm or the posterior of his arm?
Both sets of teeth made contact with certain of those wounds, yes, but not all of them.
But neither the top nor the bottom teeth made any contact that you observed, assuming your issue as far as an animal attack. There's no evidence of any animal attack on the bottom of Mr. O'Keefe's right arm, correct?
I'm not sure what you mean by bottom.
Anterior,
Interior? That's correct.
and nothing on the posterior or the anterior of his left arm,
That is correct.
and nothing on his legs,
That's correct.
nothing on his torso,
Correct.
nothing on his head. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, as far as the marks that you did observe that you do attribute to an animal attack, can you even say with certainty whether or not those marks you feel are bite marks versus scratch marks? Do you have any idea which are which?
There may be a combination.
So is that no?
Well, no, I think that the ones that had the linear abrasions above the small round punctate abrasions, I believe that those are bite marks from upper and lower teeth.
Now, you indicated that part of what you had reviewed was a dog bite history for a dog from 34 Fairview Road named Chloe. Is that right?
Yes.
And there were a couple different instances of that dog essentially getting in a fight with other dogs, correct?
Yes.
And at any point in time, did you see anything in there as far as a dog going after a human in which there was no other dog present?
No.
And there were actually photographs contained within that material of dog bites from that dog, from Chloe, correct?
Yes.
Did any of those dog bites that you saw in those photographs look anything like what you observed in the photos that you saw of Mr. O'Keefe's arm?
No, but. Okay.
That's all, man.
Objection, Your Honor.
No, so the answer is no. You can get back up, Mr. Jackson, but the answer to that question is no. Next question.
So is it your testimony that from reviewing what you reviewed, that what you observe on Mr. O'Keefe's arm is consistent with an animal attack to the exclusion of any other possibilities?
To a degree of reasonable medical certainty, yes.
So as far as any other sort of blunt impact injuries or other manifestations of how those scratches got there, you're saying, nope, had to be an animal attack.
I've seen thousands of wounded.
Come on. What I'm asking you is.
All right, so Mr. Lally, I'm going to let the witness answer.
Go ahead, ma'am.
I've seen thousands of people with injuries to their skin, and from blunt, from sharp, from all different mechanisms. Those injuries did not look like blunt force injuries.
So is your testimony that the injuries to his arm don't look anything like blunt force injuries that you've seen before? You wouldn't characterize them as that?
That's correct.
And that's based on some photographs and some other materials that you began reviewing sometime May 17th, 2024.
Yes, I'm an ER doctor. I need to make a diagnosis quickly when I see something, and I'm trained to do that. That's my specialty.
Were you being asked as an ER doctor to come to a quick conclusion in this case?
No,
But you did anyway.
it's how I'm trained.
Nothing further.
Very briefly, Your Honor. Please report.
Go ahead.
Concerning the forensic odontology report, the NAS report that Mr. Lally asked you about, what is your understanding about the report as it pertains to identifying individuals who left a bite mark? Explain that to me, please.
I believe the report says that that is not reliable as it once was thought to be.
Like a fingerprint identifying a human being, DNA identifying a person, or a bite mark identifying a person. NAS said, not the bite mark. Doesn't work that way.
That's correct.
Has nothing to do with the pattern of injuries that you've seen 1,000 times from animals, correct?
Correct.
You were asked several questions about the injuries that you saw and studied attended to highly trained canines, police dogs, correct?
Yes.
Very different than just a domestic dog that somebody might have as a pet, correct?
Correct.
And the bite injuries are very, very different as well, aren't they?
That is correct.
You were asked whether or not you were aware, based on UC Davis's report, that there was no canine DNA found on the swabs that were sent to them, correct?
Yes,
Are you also aware that there was pig DNA?
I'm aware of that.
Did that have any impact did you analyze that at all, one way or the other?
Not to any degree of scientific certainty, no.
But you do know that dogs chew on pig ears sometimes, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
You've reviewed at least a report, if not a series of reports, that indicate that a particular dog has an attack history, correct?
Yes,
You were asked specifically by Mr. Lally whether or not the wounds in a dog attack on another dog attack where a human stuck a hand in the middle look anything like these, correct? Remember that question?
I remember a question like
And
that.
you said no, but, and then you were cut off. Remember that?
Yes,
Can you finish that answer for us?
yes. So animals and dogs in particular can inflict a wide variety of injuries on the skin, from just individual puncture wounds to abrasions where there's a scratching of the skin, to where there's actually a pulling away pulling away of the skin from the underlying tissues, ripping effect. And so there's a variety of wounds that or patterns that one can see from an animal attack. It depends a lot on the thickness of the skin, the movement of between the victim and the animal, and also the power of the animal and the training of the animal. Yes.
So in other words, not all wounds inflicted by a particular animal are going to look exactly the same.
Correct.
Very dynamic situation, isn't it?
Objection.
Sustained.
Doctor, having seen up to 1,000 bite and claw marks on the human body, and based on your review of the entirety of the case file that you reviewed, including the nature and the pattern and consistency of the injuries that you saw on Mr. O'Keefe's right arm, what is your opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty about the nature of those injuries?
Objection.
Sustained.
What is your ultimate conclusion and opinion about the injuries that you saw and that you reviewed and that we saw today?
Objection.
Sustained.
Can you tell the jurors at the end of the day, what is your opinion and conclusion about those injuries?
Objection.
Sustained.
Your Honor, can we approach?
Your Honor. No more questions.
You are
And-
unmuted.
Mr. Lally, you had no more questions?
No, yeah.
Okay. All right, doctor, you are all set.
Okay, thank you.
All right, jurors, we will take our luncheon break.
Court, all rise to the jury.
You raise your right hand. You solemnly swear the evidence you give the court and jury in the case now and hearing shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you. You may take a seat.
Good afternoon.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes.
Sir, if you pull that microphone as close to your face as you can so your voice will be kept up, and I'd ask you to state your name and spell your last name.
Sure. Richard Green, that's Green.
And where do you live, sir?
I now reside in Coldwater, Michigan.
What do you do?
I own and operate a company called United States Forensics.
And what is United States Forensics?
Sure. We're a digital investigation firm. We're licensed in Florida and Michigan, but we do cases across the country.
All right. And again, I'd ask you to keep your voice up only because we have an air conditioner there and we have jurors behind me. That
Okay. I'll do my best, sir.
Yeah, as best you can. Now, you are president of that company, sir?
I am.
In addition to managing the company, what do you do on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I perform the majority of the investigations. I specialize in computer, cell phone, cloud, auto video, metadata media, surveillance systems, things of that nature.
Do you work in conjunction with others?
Certainly.
Describe that, please.
Certainly. Well, we do take cases from individuals. I prefer to take cases from attorneys. We've also worked with numerous public defenders. We've worked with a federal public defender. We've worked with law enforcement. So quite a variety of clientele.
Civil cases?
Yeah, civil and criminal. I would put it at about 60% criminals, 40% civil.
Okay. And on the criminal side, you've done both law enforcement and defense, correct?
Yeah, most of the law enforcement ones, though, have been more geared towards civil. It's when they had perhaps they were party to a suit and it was just improper for them to use their own experts. So that's where we've provided assistance.
All right. Now, how long have you been involved in the field of data forensics?
Sure. Well, my first case and testimony was 28 years ago. I'm not even sure we called it data forensics back then, but that was 28 years ago. And then about 16 years ago, started the company United States Forensics and been full-time in the industry since that point.
All right. Yeah, you'd mentioned that you'd actually testified for the first time 28 years ago. That would have been 1996, if my math is correct?
That's correct.
You were qualified as an expert witness at that time?
Yes, sir.
In order to have been qualified as an expert witness, you must have had experience before that?
Yeah, it was specifically in computers. We didn't do much with cell phones back then. By about a decade or so in computer IT, networking. We actually built a line of computers, a lot of repairs. So I was pretty deep into the computer IT world at that point.
Okay. And you say you formed your company in 2006?
Correct.
And you work full-time, part-time? What's your schedule?
Oh, it's been full-time ever since.
Would you describe to the jury, please, your educational background, your training, certifications, etc.?
Why don't we break it down into smaller segments?
Sure.
Okay.
First, with regard to the training that you've received.
Sure. So that would have to do with Associates of Digital Forensics.
Well, that would more be your education, right? You received an associate's degree in digital forensics?
Correct.
Okay, so why don't we start with education since you did?
Okay. Well, that was part of the work and more or less the formal training to get that degree. The certifications, which again, this all kind of goes hand in hand, but the certification training would be the CCE, which is certified computer examiner from the International Association of Criminal Investigation Specialists. I also have a certification as a computer crime related investigator, cybersecurity, as well as computer first responder. The training aspects over the last 18 years on really a daily basis, when I've worked, I've participated in listservs, done research into the newest developments in the computer forensics, and really on usually a weekly basis, we'll target some training seminar I found in this business, even if you took like 6 months off, you would start to get behind in this business. It changes that rapidly, and you really need to do continual training.
Okay, and again, your voice trailed off a little bit at the end, so.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry to keep reminding you, but I just want to make sure everybody hears. With regard to the amount, your caseload at USA Forensics, can you give the jury some idea of how many cases you handle on a yearly basis or have handled historically?
Yeah, we average, I'd say between 100 and 120 cases a year. We probably get inquiries to about 3 times that amount.
Okay, and have you testified as an expert witness in the area of computer forensics since that 1996 first appearance?
Yeah, we testified about 2 dozen times in various state and federal courts.
Okay, and when you say various states and courts, is that state court, federal court, both?
Both.
Now, directing your attention to September of 2022, were you contacted by somebody to become involved in this matter?
Yes, sir.
Who that was?
I believe it was Miss Little.
What were you asked to do?
Well, there were 3 cell phones related to this case, and to provide relevance with the data on those phones as related to the incident on January 29th, 2022.
Okay, and were you aware of the owners of those 3 phones?
Certainly. It was Karen Reed, John O'Keefe, and Jennifer McCabe.
Now, I'd like to ask you first, if I can, about John O'Keefe's phone. How did you receive the data from that phone, if you remember?
Yeah, we received what's called an image file, and that's a forensic term that we use. Essentially, it's a copy of the data that's encapsulated into a single file. In this case, it was a zip file.
Did you examine that data?
I did.
What were your goals during your examination of John O'Keefe's phone? What were you looking for?
Well, initially what was reported was the location data. We wanted to get an idea of when he had arrived and anything else that we could tell from that as far as location.
And when you say when he arrived, do you remember the location that you were asked to learn when he arrived?
Yeah, 34 Fairview.
In Canton?
Yes, sir.
All right. Were you able to determine, as a result of your examination, approximately when his phone arrived at 34 Fairview Road, according to the location data?
Yes, sir.
And how did you do it?
Sure. Well, I say we, so that's proverbial we. I extracted the location cache data, which is stored in the on your phone, and it's in the certain location. We exported that out, and then we use a tool called CellHawk, and we import it in there, so we can take literally thousands of data points and automate that process to specific GPS locations, and just as importantly, the range of accuracy that that location is reporting.
Okay. So according to the process that you underwent, what time did the location data indicate that John O'Keefe's phone arrived at 34 Fairview on January 29th, 2022?
So the first one right to the driveway was at 12:24 and 28 seconds.
12:24 and 28 seconds.
Correct.
Now, if I asked you to filter John O'Keefe's location data within an accuracy of 3 feet using CellHawk, could you try to do that?
Yes, sir.
In fact, did you try to do it?
I did.
When?
Last night.
Who asked you to do that?
You did, sir.
Let me approach you, Honor.
Yes.
So I placed that document before you. Could you familiarize yourself with that and look up at me when you're done?
All right.
Recognize that?
I do.
What is it?
So this is a screenshot from the CellHawk program. It has a kind of a central box here that says database settings, and this is where we apply a certain filter.
And what filter did you apply?
This was for the accuracy of less than or equal to 3 feet.
With regard to what?
John O'Keefe's location data.
Is that an exact? Is the data on that document exactly what you received when you used the CellHawk program to filter the data?
Yes, sir.
I would offer that, Your Honor.
No objection.
No objections.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said objection.
So you need to give it to Madam Court Reporter?
I'm all flustered. Sorry.
652.
And if the witness could have that again.
Thank you.
With permission, I'd like to publish that, Your Honor.
Okay.
Okay, so Mr. Green, what are we looking at?
Okay, so that is the screenshot from the cell hawk.
And what can you tell us about what you learned from that exhibit?
Well, I'll just use the pointer here, might help. You can see up in this part here, where this is where we apply the filter for 3 feet or less. That'd be the accuracy. And then it actually returns 0 results, meaning all of the data within there had an accuracy rating higher than that 3 foot. It could be 5 meters or 10 meters, but none of it was granular enough at a 3 foot or less accuracy level.
Okay. And if you had input an accuracy of within, say, 500 feet, what would you find?
Yeah, you would see then a large number of circles, each circle representing the meters that the accuracy would be related to. What's really important to understand, though, is you don't want to look at just the middle of the circle. That accuracy indicates it could be anywhere in the circle. So if you saw one and it encompassed 2 or 3 houses, you could only draw that inference of somewhere in that circle. So it's kind of like how the hurricane, they say don't just look at the cone, right? Because it could be different than that. Also, the accuracy, this is Apple's best guess of what the accuracy is. So it could actually be different than that. It's Apple is using a number of services, and they're giving back the best estimation that they can for the accuracy.
Okay. So we've talked about the location cache data and where it put John O'Keefe's phone in terms of arriving at 34 Fairview, but was there also Apple Health data on John O'Keefe's phone during that time?
Certainly, yes.
Is Apple Health data generally accepted within the forensic science community as being reliable?
Well, the Apple Health data comes from something called Health Kit, but it's integral to the iOS system. So anyone that has an iPhone probably seen Apple Health data, and it's known to have extremely valuable data that the forensic tools work with and present to us. The degree of accuracy, it depends on the type of data that's being pulled out on the artifacts. For example, steps are known to have an accuracy of around 98% on the actual steps occurring.
So if the Apple Health data returns, for instance, steps of 20 steps within a certain time period, 98% of the time Apple's going to be right?
That's what studies have shown.
All right. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
You want this back? Okay.
Mr. Green, I've placed another document before you. Do you recognize what that is?
Yes, I do. This is this lists out Apple Health data for that was from John O'Keefe's phone on January 29th, 2022.
All right. That came from the data that you received, the image file of John O'Keefe's phone, correct?
That is correct.
I would offer that, Your Honor.
Mr. Lally?
No objection.
And with the court's permission, may I publish that, Your Honor?
Okay.
Specifically, I'd like to start with page 2, record 2. Okay, Mr. Green, are you wearing the right glasses to be able to see the scene?
Yeah, I probably need bifocals here. I keep switching glasses, but
are you able to read what is on the screen? Or if it's easier, you can look on your document in front of you. It's page 2, record 2.
yeah, I think I'm going to have to do that. I can probably still see good enough to do the laser one. I'm sorry, which record is this you're looking at?
Page 2, record number 2.
Okay, yes, I have that in front of me.
Okay. What does record number 2 show on page 2 of John's Apple Health data?
Sure. So this is the number of meters. It's listed as 87.74, and the time is listed between 12:21 and 10 seconds. And there's a milliseconds after that, but I'll just round it off to the second if you don't mind. So 12:21 and 10 seconds to 12:24 and 22 seconds.
Okay. And you said that it showed 87 meters traveled during that time period?
Correct.
And with regard to that same time period, 12:21 and 10 seconds and 12:24 and 22 seconds, please turn to page 5. And Mr. Bates, if you would zoom in on record number 2.
I have that.
Okay. What does record number 2 reflect?
Again, it's the same time period, and the steps taken is recorded as 80 steps.
Okay, and you said the same time period, so again, 12:21:10 to 12:24:22, correct?
Correct.
All right, now I'd like to direct your attention to page 4, record number 1. And Mr. Bates, if you could post that. When you're ready, Mr. Green, if you could tell the jury what that reflects?
Sure. So this indicates 3 sets of floors. That represents elevation change. So it doesn't indicate to us up or down, but 3 steps. And the time period for that is 12/22/14 to 12/24/37.
Okay, did you say 12/21/14 to 12/22, I'm sorry, 12/24/37?
Yeah, 12/22/14 to 12/47/37.
I see.
Okay.
And with regard to all of this data, the 80 steps and the 3 flights of stairs that you mentioned, is it possible to pinpoint where within the time frame that's given those steps or flights of stairs were ascended or descended?
No, the most granular we can get is the time period, and it doesn't signify as any more likely at the beginning of the time period than at the end of the time period than at some time in the middle. And if you think logically, like distance traveled, that doesn't happen at a split moment. It happens over a period of time. So it's time is a factor in that equation, and this is how the Apple records that data. You got to look at the time overall.
Okay, so you don't know if it's the steps are bunched up toward the beginning or toward the end or more evenly spread out?
No, I would not be able to tell you that.
Now we've discussed the Apple Health data. I want to go back for a second to talk about the location data on the iPhone. Does that data that you've already talked about in terms of the arrival time that it gave for John O'Keefe's phone at 34 Fairview, does that arrival time fall within or outside the range of 12:21 and 10 seconds, or 12:21 and 10 seconds and 12:24 and 37 seconds?
Well, there is that certainly indicates an overlap, but the health data is ending after the arrival. And
now, I'd like to discuss with you the concept of clocks used by apps on an iPhone.
Sure.
Are you aware of the 3 different clocks that are used by iPhone apps?
I am.
What are they?
We have 3 separate internal clocks. You have a monotonic clock, a baseband clock, and a wall clock.
Okay, and is the wall clock also called a display clock?
Yeah, that would be also a common name for that.
And what is the significance of the existence of 3 clocks regarding different times that may show up within these records?
Sure. Well, app developers can access Apple program library, and they can call upon any of the clocks to use within their apps.
Okay. Now, in your investigation and examination of this case, did you find examples on this phone of different clocks being used?
So in this particular case, I had reprocessed the data with the newest version of the Axiom forensic program. It's similar to Cellbrite. There are competitors to Cellbrite, and we use both programs. And this newest version had a feature in there where you can filter for the Waze application. And again, just following up and seeing how this functioned, we filtered for the Waze application. And for the first time, we saw this monotonic timestamp being related to the Waze application.
Okay. I want to show you Exhibit 640, if I may approach, Your Honor. I've placed Exhibit 640 before you, sir. Do you recognize what that is?
Yes, sir.
What is it?
So this is a screenshot from the Magnet Action program I was referring to. It's the 8.1, actually it looks like 4287, but
Keep your voice up, sir.
I'm sorry. Yeah. So it's the newest version of the program, and we have it filtered for the Waze app, and it's giving us the timestamps associated with it.
With the court's permission, may I publish that?
Okay.
There we go.
And first of all, are you? Now that writing is probably too small. I can't read it.
Okay. Thank you. I'll go off of this one.
There we go. With regard to what we are looking at there on that part of the screen, what are we looking at, Mr. Green?
Okay, so this is listing details of this particular artifact, and you can see that this is bundled. The com.waze.iPhone, that's a standard bundle type name where it always starts with com. And then the application reference.
And what does that mean? It says it's highlighted on the screen, com.waze.iPhone. What does that mean that we're in right now?
Yeah, well, this is an artifact specifically related to the Waze program.
Waze app.
Yes, sir.
All right, go on.
Okay, and we can see here our entry for the monotonic time, the baseband time, and the display time.
And what did you notice about the relationship of the 3 of those?
Certainly. Well, most noticeable about this, the monotonic is running a little over 3 minutes ahead of the display. So I think it's 3 minutes and 1 second, give or take a little. So, in a lot of cases, 3 minutes may not seem like much, but in this case, this struck me as important to Objection. Move to strike.
Sustained. I'm willing to strike that. Next
Okay.
question.
I apologize.
That's okay.
You can hand that back to Madam Court Reporter.
Certainly. Thank
And
you.
I'd like to go back to the Apple Health data, Mr. Baines, if you can put that back up. And this was to be page 2, record number 3. And you don't still have that in front of you, do you?
Actually, I do.
You do.
I do.
Page 2, record number 3, sir.
Yes, sir.
What does that show?
All right. Okay, so this is another entry from John O'Keefe's cell phone data, and this records 25.46 meters occurring between 12:31:56 and 12:32:16.
Okay. And directing your attention to page 5, record number 3, you could tell the jury what that shows. And if we can have that displayed as well, Mr. Baines.
Certainly. So this is directly related to the distance, and this is recording 36 steps, and it's the same time period, 12:31:56 to 12:32:16.
Okay. So we have 36 steps being taken according to Apple Health data on John O'Keefe's phone for a time period that ends at 12:32:16.
Objection.
Sustained. Ask it differently, Mr. Irini.
With regard to those 36 steps, do we know where within that time frame they were taken?
Sure. Let me reread that here. We January 29th, 2022, 12:31:56 a.m. It's actually 12:31:56.109 a.m. and 12:32:16.507 a.m.
Okay. All right. So now I'd like to switch, if we can, to Jennifer McCabe's phone and your analysis of that. During the course of your examination, when you reviewed data from her phone, did you find a particular artifact of interest?
Yes, I did.
What did you find?
We found a Google search that happened. First of all, the search was "How long to die in cold," and it happened at or before 2:27 a.m.
All right. Where was that search found?
Sure. So the artifact on that was called a Safari Suspended Tabs artifact, and there's a database associated with that called the Browser DB database, and in a company file, which is by the same name but ends in WAL, which stands for Write Ahead Log. And the write ahead log is where the data first gets written to, and then at certain points, that data then gets committed and written to the main database.
All right. So that, if I'm correct, that browserstate.db/wall file, that's a temporary file, right?
It's temporary by nature, but it's not. It's integral. It's part of the way the SQLite functions. So it's not like a throwaway file. It's part of the way the whole system works.
And is it helpful to you when evaluating artifacts?
Certainly, yeah. Just by nature of it, we'll find a lot of the newest artifacts in that wall file.
Now, how do you determine the timing in terms of the timestamp on the browserstate.db wall file?
Sure. So the wall file has different rows and columns. You can kind of think of it as an Excel spreadsheet. And in this one particular column, had it was a time column. That'd be the nature of the data going into it. And this the heading on this particular one was last viewed time.
Okay. Regarding that Google search for HOS long, and I say HOS long to
Correct.
die in cold, found in the browserstate.db wall file, what was the date and time for that artifact?
Sure. So that's recorded in what's called Apicocoa time, and it's actually the number of seconds since January 1st, 2001. So you end up with this large number, but that gets converted to present to us something that's human readable, and then you have to apply the offset for the local. So once you do all those calculations, that's where we get the January 29th, 2022 at 2:27 in the morning.
The specific, do you remember the number of seconds after?
I believe it's 40 seconds.
2:27, 40 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay. And in what state did you find that artifact?
Yeah. So the specific artifact, or it comes from a record, and the record number on this is 4028, I believe, and it was in a deleted state.
Okay. Now, what would you normally expect to find along with the artifact, sir?
So you'd have the date and time, the URL, which the way the URL presents itself, we know that it's a Google search, but you also see a history of other places that tab has been.
And with this particular artifact, did you learn the full internet history of websites related to that record?
No, that wasn't possible. We were only able to get the one website. I would say,
And I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I interrupted you. Sorry.
Well, no, so we definitely got the one artifact, the Google search, and we have the time related to it, but we do not know everywhere else that tab had been.
What significance was there to you about the fact that the full internet history related to that record could not be recovered?
Well, I wanted to do a little deeper dive into that, and so I used some various other database specific tools. One was called Belkasoft X, which has an excellent database viewer in it. Sanderson Forensics, which is known to specialize in this type of work, and
ArtX?
I'm sorry,
ArtX?
you saved me. Yes, ArtX, which is a program known in the community for research.
And how did you sort of cross-reference the three of those together? How'd you use them?
Yeah, so all three of those tools, along with Axiom and Cellbrite, which I did, they do have a low-level SQL viewer as well. So I looked at the data with all five of those tools, and I found it to be consistent amongst all the tools.
And in addition to using those tools, what else did you do?
So I wanted to get a little more context. One thing with this artifact, it is deleted. And one thing about deleted data, sometimes you get it all back, sometimes you don't, sometimes you get a fragment. Deleted data makes it very difficult to give you the whole picture of what's happening. So in this particular case, I wanted to see what other artifacts were around this time as it related to web history, and particularly this browser database file.
And so what do you compare the 2:27 a.m. search to in order to gain more information?
Exactly.
I'm sorry.
What the information was. So what we found is that when we looked at a particular URL, a particular website that was visited, and then searched using that URL, the browser state database entry is the last entry in all of that. So we could see searches, videos playing. There's an artifact called knowledge C that records the user's activity, but the browser state is the very last entry on the items that we observed.
And did you find other examples of that you can speak to before this jury?
Yes, I believe we have one printed out there.
Okay. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Okay.
I placed the document before you, sir. If you could familiarize yourself with that and tell me when you're done.
I have it.
What is it?
Okay, so this is another screenshot from the Axiom program, and it is showing a search that we conducted for raining men, and then it takes that search, and we have a couple different items on there. We set the date to begin in 1970 and ending in 2100. In other words, we only want to see artifacts that had dates associated with them, and then we listed them from the newest date to the oldest date. And this particular one, again, it ends up with the Safari suspended tabs artifact being the very last in the series of dates and times.
All right, I'd like to go through that, but first I'd offer it into evidence, Your Honor.
Okay. Any objection?
No, Your Honor. There you go.
And with the court's permission, may it be published, Your
You
Honor?
want this?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So we have a number of columns here. Could you explain to the jury what's going on with that exhibit?
Certainly. So I'm gonna switch glasses back here. And forgive me.
Do you need the light on, sir, or are you okay?
No, I'm fine, Your Honor.
Okay.
Thank you much. I can certainly do this. So we are looking at here web-related history, and also I have the filter turned on for application usage because there's some log files, sort of files that the iPhone keeps track of to record user interactions, and that can give us a idea of the history as well. And then, as I mentioned, we have it filtered so that's only showing dates that dates existed, and we took the earliest possible date to a date way in the future. And then it's listed, and next to the date and time, you'll see a little arrow, and it's skinny at the top and big at the bottom. That tells you it's going from smallest, earliest time to latest time. And this particular view is showing us the last of that series, because what's relevant and really important here is that the Safari suspended state tabs ends up being the last of the entries related to that, not one of the beginning of the entries related to that.
And what is the significance of the Safari state tab being the last entry? What does that tell you?
Yeah, well, so it tells us the internet history happened before that, and the purpose of this tab on at least this particular iPhone with this very specific iOS version is to record the state of that tab when the user left that. And the the whole purpose of that is if you're on Safari, you're on a website and say you have to take a phone call or answer a text message and you navigate away from the Safari app, when you come back, it remembers where you were and allows you to pick off from there. It also allows you to hit the tab button and see what other tabs you might have open and navigate to one of those tabs.
All right, so as I see the last tab, am I correct that the time is 1:29:22, same day, at 2:27 and 38 seconds? Is that what it says on your?
I'm sorry. I'm definitely getting a pair of bifocals. I apologize here. I feel a little silly. Yes, on this particular one. So that is just moments before the Google search artifact.
The one that you previously talked about, the How long to die.
How long to die in the code, yes.
But all the other history of this particular artifact was before that time, correct?
Correct.
So with regard to what that tells you about when It's Raining Men was either searched or accessed, was that at, after, or before 2:27 and 38 seconds?
I'm sorry, can you?
Sustained.
Okay, well, if you say it one more time.
All right, let me try and put it a different way. Given the timestamp of 2:27 and 38 seconds on January 29th for that Safari suspended state tab with the It's Raining Men, what did that tell you about the timing of when It's Raining Men was accessed by the user?
Yeah, well, so the indications would be that that tab was brought up and then went away from to do another tab. So it can happen less than a second. It doesn't take long to open up a tab and start a new tab. Can be done very quickly.
I'm not really phrasing this the right way to get what I want. What I want is the timing of the interaction with It's Raining Men by the actual iPhone user. When did that happen?
But certainly, all the activity that we have is all prior to the recording of this that timestamp in the browser state.
All right. Now, with regard to this particular example where the browser state DB is the last entry, so the activity happened before, was that unique on this phone, or were there many examples of this?
No, I found many examples of this exact behavior.
All right. Now, given your findings in researching these issues and how this user used this iPhone with this iOS, do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty as to the timing of that search for How Long to Die in Cold?
Objection.
Sustained.
Do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty as to when How Long to Die in Cold was searched?
Objection.
Sustained. I can see you at cycle.
Thank you.
You are unmuted.
Do you have an opinion as to the timing of that first search for How Long to Die in Cold?
Yes, I do.
What is that opinion?
That would have happened at or before January 29, 2022 at 2:27:40 a.m. in the morning.
And what is the basis for your opinion?
Again, by how this particular phone operates with that exact operating system and comparing it to other data on that phone and the way it presented it out itself is all consistent with that search happening at or before that time.
And what opinions or conclusions did you reach regarding how, if any, how the 2:27 a.m. search was deleted?
Well, we know that that's in a deleted state. And importantly on that phone is I keep using the proverbial we, I found a lot of other that have been used or deleted artifacts between midnight and the early mornings on January 29, 2022.
Okay. Are you aware of any internal mechanisms that could have caused that deletion?
No, not in this particular case. I know of no mechanism that would have done that.
All right. And you mentioned other deletions on the phone. I want to show you what has been marked, if I may approach. Sure. MMM for identification.
Yep.
Do you recognize what I've placed before you, sir?
Yes, sir.
What is it?
Okay, this is from Cellbrite. It's a program, again, like the Axiom that processes data. And this is this lists out a 623. This lists out a deleted call record.
Okay. Are you able to see from that record to whom the call was placed?
Yeah, well, we have the number, and I won't necessarily read it out loud here, but through searching, and this is from the phone of Jennifer McCabe, but through searching for that the number, I was able to see that it went to. You want to say the name?
Sure.
Yeah, Uncle Brian A.
Okay. I would offer that into evidence, Your Honor.
Same objection as before, Your Honor. As when this was, may we approach?
Okay. Four different numbers, so I sort of wanted to keep it with that. We are so far removed from where it was that this will just come in as the next exhibit. So you will technically have it in evidence twice.
Okay.
55.
Thank you. May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
There's one final document before you. If you can identify that for the jury, please.
Yes, this is another report generated out of Cellbrite. It's based on Ms. McCabe's cell phone data, and this lists out the call log with a number of deleted items and number of live items.
I would offer that, Your Honor.
If I get to see.
Sure.
It's fine, Your Honor. I think it's already in evidence as well, but.
So
Actually, it's, I confirmed it's not. It's not yet in evidence. We looked at the exhibits that were specified, so.
they're
656.
Thank you. If you could hand that to the witness, if I could have the first page of that exhibit displayed. This is, okay, with regard to that exhibit, Mr. Green, what did you find that was unusual, if anything?
Objection.
sustained. Ask it differently, Mr. Yannetti.
Yes. What did you find of note?
Certainly. What was the time frame of the deleted records? Now, I'll just talk about this particular report here. It starts at 5:33:47 in the morning, and on the second page, we see it ends at 8:50 and 15 seconds, again, a.m. And then the normal calls, what we call live data, then begins at 8:59 and 34 seconds and goes on throughout the day with no additional deletions.
And am I right that those are all, that's the call log, those are all phone calls?
Correct. Yeah, this is the call log.
And what was the difference between the calls that were at 8:59 and after on January 29th, 2022, and the calls that were before 8:50 a.m. on January 29th, 2022?
Yeah, well, it's the state they were found in, deleted versus live data.
I'm sorry?
Deleted data at the earlier time and live data after the 8:59:34.
What percentage of phone calls were found deleted on Jennifer McCabe's phone prior to 8:50 a.m. on January 29th?
So all right, I have to see you. Take this down for a minute, please. I have to see counsel.
You are unmuted.
So, Mr. Green, I'm not sure if that question was clear or if you understood it. If it's not, please let me know. But I had asked you from the first recorded call there that was listed as deleted until 8:50 a.m. or so, what percentage of calls were deleted on Jen McCabe's phone within that time period?
Yeah, so we found no live data, so 100% of them would have been deleted.
Now, are you aware of the term spontaneous deletion?
No, sir. I know what the individual words mean, but in relation to digital forensics, I'm not familiar with that term.
And do you have an opinion as to how those calls would have been deleted from that phone?
Those would have been used or deleted.
Can I have a moment?
Sure.
No further questions. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Do you know who Miss Jessica Hyde is?
I do.
Are you aware that she wrote a report in relation to this case,
Yes.
specifically in regard to the Google searches for Ms. McCabe's phone that you were just talking about?
Yes, sir. It was very specific about that search.
And have you had a chance to review that report?
I have.
You also know who Ian Whiffen is?
Certainly, yes.
And are you aware that he wrote several reports or submitted several items in relation to, again, the exact topic that you're testifying about in relation to the Google searches on Ms. McCabe's phone?
Yes, sir. I understand that.
And have you had a chance to review those materials as well?
Yes, sir.
You understand that they both disagree with what your opinion is in relation to those searches?
I absolutely understand that, sir.
Now, just as far as your qualifications and certifications go, I'm just having a difficult time. From the certifications that you have, at what point were you, or what, if any, certifications do you have with reference to Cellbrite as a tool, as far as your use and interpretation of data from Cellbrite?
Certainly. So my certifications are much more broad. They have to do with a lot of the fundamentals and how we conduct the investigations and what tools we should know and when we need to know we need to do more work and such like that. Cellbrite, I do not have any specific Cellbrite certifications. They offer many of them. However, I have participated in, God, I can't even count, hundreds of their training events that they offer, both Cellbrite, Axiom, Belkasoff. They all provide the community with fantastic support as far as that. And although certainly a class can be very good, but you really need to stay up to speed. You've got to participate in the most recent understanding being put out there. Even in the changes of their tools will change from one version to another.
And so, to the point, as far as you have no certifications in regard to Cellbrite as a tool and how to use it, those kind of things.
That's correct, sir.
And in this specific instance, at any point, did you reach out to Cellbrite to go over sort of your findings or your opinions in relation to this search?
I did.
And who, if anyone, did you speak with from Cellbrite?
As close as I can remember, I know it was Leo, and I believe it was Santos.
And do you know what part of Cellbrite they work in or what they do?
Well, he was in the technical support and contacted him. He had informed me that they had elevated this up to some higher level technical support when they came back. His comments to me, if you want to hear them, was that this. Okay.
That's his comment, but at
Okay,
some point,
I
you
understand.
talked to technical support, is that correct?
Absolutely.
And they indicated that they would refer you to actually Mr. Whiffen's team?
No, sir, they did not.
So you weren't told that you were referred to Mr. Whiffen's team and you weren't contacted by anyone from Mr. Whiffen's team?
No, and I forget the exact date. A couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago, out of the blue, I got an email from Ms. Whiffen saying, and I can't, I don't want to misquote them, but certainly I got an email
I'm
from
asking you
him.
about any specific conversations
Okay.
that you had. When I'm asking about a time period more back in 2022.
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear you.
Back in 2022, did you reach out to Cellbrite in relation to this search and your opinions related to it?
Yes, sir.
And at that point, was that the point that you spoke to someone from technical support?
Yes, sir.
And at that point, did someone from technical support actually refer you or tell you that they were referring you to Mr. Whiffen's team?
No, sir, I had absolutely no idea about that.
So no one from no one from Mr. Whiffen's team reached out to you and then you just never called them back? That didn't happen?
Not that I'm aware.
Now, you were asked to look at a couple different phones, and I'm assuming by counsel for the defendant, correct?
Can you say that once again? I'm sorry.
You were asked to look at 3 different phones is what the testimony was. And I'm assuming that was by some counsel for the defendant, correct? No one else asked you to look at these phones,
Oh,
correct?
correct. Yes, it was from the defense asked me to. Yes,
And so the phones that you were asked to look at were Mr. O'Keefe's phone, the defendant's phone, and Ms. McKay's phone, correct?
correct.
Now, as far as Kerry Roberts' phone, were you ever asked to look at that?
No,
And with respect to the defendant's phone, was there any GPS location information or data that you observed in her phone?
so we had an indication that location had been using there with something called Apple Map tiles, and those probably when you use the Apple Map app, that it in order for it to work, it will create these little tiles or little pieces of pictures, and they get stitched together to give you the view that you see on your phone. Now, for that had to be working, we know location data had to be working. This particular location data, the location data cache, is known to only be present on the phone for a couple of weeks. Now, what I don't know, and Mr. Lally, if I'm going too far, just please stop me. What I don't know is what measures were taken to preserve that data, whether it was put in airplane mode, where the location services were turned off, whether it was put in a Faraday bag. And quite frankly, Mr. Lowry, I don't know if they did all that, if the location data would have remained or not. I've never tested that, but all indications, it would have had location data on the day that it was seized, because we received the Apple Map tile. But when I got the full extraction, there was no location data there. Now, I did observe.
So there was no
Okay.
GPS location data on the defendant's phone, correct?
Correct.
From what you observed.
And again, if I'm, there was, I did find deleted location data from April of 2022.
Now, with respect to the defendant's phone, did you also find deleted web history data from the afternoon of January 29, 2022?
No, I'm sorry, I didn't observe that.
Didn't observe it or didn't look for it?
You know, I really don't have a recollection if I specifically looked for deleted data. I don't believe I did. I don't know if I would have had to have a cause to.
Now, with reference to, you were asked a question about location accuracy within 3 feet. You did some sort of thing last night on Cellhawk using that tool. Is that correct?
Certainly.
And you were asked to do that after Trooper Guarino testified yesterday. Is that correct?
I understand you testified yesterday.
And so with relation to you creating sort of that document, and that's now been marked as an exhibit, was that something that Mr. Yannetti asked you to do in relation to Trooper Guarino's testimony yesterday?
Well, in all fairness, you need to ask Mr. Yannetti. I could make an assumption here. I mean, if
I'm not
I don't know quite. I'm not trying not to answer you, you know, but I was asked by Mr. Yannetti to perform that search.
So, Mr. Lally, please be cautious of that.
Yes, sir. So, Ms. Green, with respect to that 3 feet of accuracy, are you aware that what Trooper Guarino was testifying to in regard to that had absolutely nothing to do with phone applications or anything to do with data from phone or a Cellhawk or a tool or anything like that?
Now, I don't know the full extent of what Mr. Guarino would have been testifying to.
And so you're not aware that his testimony was actually in regard to reviewing cruise camera video from the Canton Police Department and photographs of where Mr. O'Keefe's body was, and then mapping that using GPS latitude and longitude based on that within a 3 feet accuracy.
The objection sustained. Ask it differently.
Are you aware of any of what Trooper Guarino testified to yesterday?
What you're mentioning, I may vaguely be remembering. And again, I'm not trying to not answer your question exactly. My conversation with Mr. Yannetti is 3 foot when it comes to GPS data. Can you tell 3 feet from GPS data? And no, it's not known to be that reliable, and particularly Apple location services. How that applies to the trooper's testimony, you know, I can't say with specificity. I'm happy to opine on location data, though.
There's no question.
Okay.
Sir, but thank you. I'm gonna have a moment, Sean.
Go on.
Now, sir, with reference to Safari and deleted tabs, isn't it true that there is no way for a user to delete a tab, only to close it? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, well, when you close a tab, all right, you're taking it out of the active state, and it's going to an inactive state that some people could call deleted. Now, the Safari history allows you to go in and delete history by certain date ranges, but you can also go into specific websites that you visited and delete those. Now you if you want me to continue, the WAL file itself, you can't open up a WAL file and say, I want to delete that record. But functioning the phone through the user interfaces will have an effect of deleting data within that WAL file.
Isn't it also true that Celebrite uses that red X to annotate that the record is no longer active and has been recovered? Which would then make it incumbent upon the examiner, being you in this instance, to determine if it was actually deleted, correct?
Yes, sir. Thank you for asking. It's yes.
That's all I'm asking.
Okay. All right.
Now, you stated in your affidavit, in your testimony, that you used the Sanderson, SQLite, or SQLite Forensic Explorer to examine the Safari tabs DB associated with the WAL file log. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, in your analysis using that Sanderson Forensic Explorer, was there an indication that House Long to Die in Cold was found in the WAL file?
Yes, sir.
Now, with regard to that, did you independently verify the cause of that timestamp that you observed there?
Yes, sir.
Now, is it your interpretation that the timestamp means the search appeared at that time solely based on the naming of the field in the database?
No, sir.
Now, can a WAL file contain items that are so new that they're not yet committed to the database?
Yes, sir. That's the purpose of it.
So the WAL file holds the newest information until it's merged to the database, including additions, deletions, changes, all of those items, correct?
That is correct.
Now, according to your affidavit, the device was in active use between 2:23 a.m. and 2:31 a.m. And just to be clear, I'm talking about Ms. McCabe's device, correct?
Correct.
And what other searches did you see at that time, and where were they performed?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? I couldn't quite hear you.
Searches did you observe in that time frame, and where were they performed?
Well, there were a number of websites, including the Raining Men exhibit that we did. There was Ozone Basketball, I believe, there Hockermont, Smith. And I can tell you that those, similarly, the last entry with those there is the browser state DB file. It's not at the beginning. It's not at the end. And I have a couple thoughts on why that may be in regards to Ms. Hyde and Ms. Whiffen. I'm happy to share those with you.
I'm not asking you anything about that, sir. What
Very
I'm
good.
asking is it possible for a change request in the WAL to a SQLite database pertaining to one particular field, leaving the other fields as what they were previously?
I want to answer your question as well as I can. So can you repeat that one more time?
Is it possible for a change request in the WAL to a SQLite database pertaining to one particular field, leaving the other fields as what they were previously?
So I'm having a little trouble answering this. So if I'm understanding correctly, when the WAL file gets written to the database, and could that have made the change ending with this deleted record? Is that the question? I'm sorry. I want to answer you. I'm just
That's
a little lost on how you're asking
Understand
it.
the question?
Sorry?
Do you not understand the question?
Why don't you move on, Mr. Mayor?
Is it possible that the URL field, which has the website name, was updated to the newest search while the timestamp retained the original search? Is that possible?
No, not the way on this particular phone in this particular iOS, and also with the user interacted with it, that it would have been at the 227 or before. The way this very specific iOS was happening, that is consistent with all the other ones that I observed out there on the phone related to specific web searches and activity.
Is it possible that the search for House Long to Die in the Cold at 6:24 a.m. was the most recent search completed in the tab?
Oh, well, not in that tab, but I certainly agree with you that there was a second search done at around that time.
Now, is it also possible that the search that you assert took place at 2:27 and 40 seconds in the morning is the same as the search that took place at 6:24:51 a.m. for that same search?
Yeah, that's inconsistent with the actual data I'm seeing on this actual phone with this precise iOS version.
Now, as far as the search in Safari with the string, as far as the smotot.apple.com included, is it? You recall that search as far as being a suggestion from Apple, from the iOS, as far as the search with how long to digest food?
Okay, I didn't hear your whole question, but I heard the last part about how long to digest food, so I can opine on that. So my feeling on that is when the how long the Dan code was put in, that was most likely a Apple suggestion. And I've done some testing. Now, the time period I'm doing my testing, is after the fact that this would have actually occurred. But as I tested that on a live phone and using a Google search, I could see that how long to digest food would come up. I also noticed the specific phrase, how long does it take to die from hypothermia? So as you do this Google search, you try to repeat what's being done. Those are two suggestions that actually came up.
And so that was something that was a suggestion and not something that was actually searched, correct?
Yeah, no, and I know that's different from my affidavit from about a year and a half ago, in all fairness, but
That's entirely different.
One person, Mr. Lally,
I'm sorry.
one person at a time.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, in fairness, I want to give you my best knowledge as I understand it saying here today, including after my review of Mr. Whiffen and Ms. Hyde's report. So I want to do everything I can to shine as much light and clarity on this as possible. So as I repeated, since that time and did the search, I would notice that is one of the things that would come up, and it would have a little picture of like a dinner plate or something like that. And there was actually a similar, if not the same picture found in the artifacts of that phone.
So just to conclude, that's not what you said in your affidavit that was actually filed under pains and penalties of perjury with this court, correct?
Yes, and on that day, that is what my true and proper belief was. Okay, since further testing, I have found that I now believe that was probably an automatic one, and if I've caused you any distress, I apologize.
Haven't caused me any distress.
Okay.
What I'm asking, sir, is that's what you filed because that's what you thought at the time, correct?
Yes, sir.
And subsequently, you've done further testing, and that's shown that you were wrong, correct?
That is correct.
Now, according to your affidavit, there was a search for how long to digest food at 6:23:49 a.m. that precedes the search for how long to die, and the misspelling here would be the key CLKD at 6:23:51 a.m. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, is it possible that the how long to digest food was a predictive suggestion from Apple rather than a search entered by the user? Is that also correct?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I believe that it was, if it had picked up a earlier search from 227 of how long to die in the cold, and then you went to retype it in, it may have then tried to give you something similar at the 623 and 624 timelines. So hopefully that answers your question.
So steps, going to Mr. O'Keefe's health data, steps doesn't necessarily mean that someone is physically taking steps, correct?
Again, the research that's done for this is steps tend to be a very accurate artifact.
So steps cannot also be coincided with, say, movement in a car or other sort of movement of the phone as far as the health data is concerned?
Sure. Well, I did, quite some time ago, do some testing with an actual iPhone 11, the same make and model, and took a drive and tried to see if it would register steps. It did not. I sat in a chair and tried to duplicate how I thought I would walk to see if it recorded steps. It did not. I took the phone from the floor to the ceiling to see if it would record a flight of stairs. It did not. The only, with that iPhone 11, same make and model that I got, it was very consistent with me actually doing walking steps, and that was whether I had it in my shirt pocket, my pants pocket, or clipped onto my belt.
That's your testimony?
That is my testimony. Yes, sir.
Now, are you familiar with GPS native locations?
Yes, sir.
And GPS native locations takes its data as far as defining latitude and longitude from a number of different sources, correct?
Well, true GPS, okay, is going to take it from the GPS network, but you may be thinking of its assisted GPS, which the iPhone uses, and that assisted GPS will try to, it kind of does a crowdsourcing. So it'll look at cell towers, what's in range as far as like Wi-Fi's and a number of other devices to try to get you an enhanced GPS location and give you the best data possible.
So it takes GPS native locations within an Apple iOS device, takes from 4 different sources. Isn't that correct?
It tries to get from a variety of sources, like I just mentioned. Not all would be available.
Now, with regard, did you look at any GPS native location data with regard to Mr. O'Keefe's phone?
Yes, sir.
And would you agree then that the GPS native locations didn't record any movement of that phone after 12:25 a.m.?
12:25. I would have to look at the exhibit to see what the time of that last entry was. I don't want to misstate something to you, sir.
Now, you were asked about sort of the elevation change in 3 floors, ascending, descending, and saying that you couldn't pinpoint a time period or within that 12:21 to 12:24 time period from the health data. Is that correct?
Correct. It happened somewhere within that time.
Could you pinpoint more specifically if you looked at the GPS native location data?
No, well, we're talking Apple Health and GPS location. So
But you said you couldn't do it.
I'm sorry. Which one are you asking about? Please.
What I'm asking is, you said you couldn't pinpoint it within the GPS health data. What I'm asking is, if you had looked at the GPS native location data, could you give a more specific pinpoint as to where Mr. O'Keefe's phone was?
I'm going to allow that.
Maybe we see briefly.
Okay.
You are unmuted.
Now, to be clear, sir, you had indicated earlier in your testimony that the elevation change from 1221 to 1224, you could not pinpoint where in that time period, or specifically where in that time period the elevation change occurred, correct?
That's correct. It's a time range. Yes, sir.
So what I'm asking is, had you looked at that in the GPS native location data, would you have been able to more accurately or specifically pinpoint when that occurred?
Okay. So the location, are you looking for a yes or no? I'm sorry.
Yes or no?
I'm trying to, there was, yes, there was location data within that time period. Okay.
And are you aware that Mr. O'Keefe's phone from the GPS native location data was actually a half mile away from 34 Fairview Road at the time that it made those recordings in the GPS Apple Health data?
Right. Yes, I understand he was using Waze, and it had made that recording. I understand that. That's why the finding that 3 minute and 1 second offset brings into serious doubt if that time was accurate. And when you apply that to that location offset, then the Apple Health data and the GPS all aligns. Now, I have not decoded Waze and found out what functions they were calling and all that. And I don't mean to indicate that I have, but I mean that the latest version of Axiom is bringing that up as an artifact and a timestamp related to Waze. And in the case of here, where minutes are important, I thought it proper that I bring this to the attention of the case as a possible explanation.
As a possible explanation?
As a possible explanation, sir, yes.
The three different clocks that you were talking about, are you aware that those are actually associated to power usage and not applications?
Right, that power usage was directly related to the Waze application.
So it's your testimony that those three clocks apply to the times in Waze? Is that your testimony?
I'm saying that the timestamps were directly related to Waze. It was reported by Axiom when you applied the filter and say, show me all the artifacts related to Waze. These were artifacts that came up related to the Waze bundle. So I guess you need to give it the weight it deserves. Like I said, I've not decoded Waze. That's not something that has been done, but I think we need to consider the 3 minute offset as it applies to giving significance to the Apple Health data and the Waze GPS.
Now, turning to Ms. McCabe's phone again, as far as the search, what you indicated as last view time, are you aware that that is actually related to a time that it was actually focused on the screen as opposed to your interpretation of it?
I'm aware that it appears to be the last time and date it was focused, and when it no longer was focused, that's when the timestamp was written. That's what's consistent with the other data on this particular phone on this very specific iOS.
Now, with regard to looking at this search, you mentioned that you used something called an ArtX tool. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And are you aware that's a tool that was actually created by Mr. Ian Whiffen?
Yeah, absolutely.
And with regards to this specific issue, as far as how this data is being interpreted from the browser state DB versus the knowledge C database and the wall file and all of those, the key list and all of those other kinds of things, as far as the misinterpretation of the data has then caused Mr. Whiffen in further versions of Cellbrite to revise that so that this kind of error can occur.
Sure, happy to answer that. So Mr. Whiffen's testing was not done with this specific version of the iOS. The iOS has been known to be changing the way this artifact works. To do proper analysis, the researcher that he is, he would need to work with that same iOS. Now, in regards to the Cellbrite question, they have two versions of the Cellbrite Physical Analyzer. One is the standard physical analyzer that's been out for several years now, probably is majority use in the community. It's a tool that takes that raw data and it puts it into human terms that we can look at and understand and write reports like you've been seeing here. So they have the Cellbrite Physical Analyzer that's out there. I believe it's 7.68, but don't quote me on that. And then they have a new version that's come out called Insights, and this operates more on where you can put multiple cases in and that. It's only the Insight versions that they have bothered updating and no longer reporting on that time. Their current Physical Analyzer program, and I tested this a few days ago, still reports on that search occurring, and that timestamp. So currently Cellbrite is providing examiners, law enforcement, and people worldwide with two different versions giving two different results. That I can't speak to more than that, other than I've tested that, and I see how those programs are working now.
My question, sir, yes or no, is are you aware that Celebrite has had to modify their software based on misinterpretation of data, as you've done in this case?
Yes, with Asterisk, they updated one of two programs.
Nothing further.
No further questions.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Green, you are all set.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, George, that's it for today.
Hey there, thanks for stopping in. We hope you will join us again. We all look forward to next time. We get to talk about true crime. Clues. Justice served in an honest fight. True crime tales till the verdict's right. Solving more than just trivial quests, where sentences rule and the defense rests. Our true crime family is great. All types of topics we debate. Smash that like and ring that bell. Hit subscribe, you might as well.